I was only kidding about selling. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular Town Council meeting for April 13, 2015. If everybody would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Marlene, if you call the roll.
Councilmember Sauer.
Present.
Councilmember Reed. Here. Councilmember Fuller.
Here.
Councilmember Bruder is sick and could not attend tonight. Vice Mayor Leonard.
Here.
Mayor Yaffe.
Here.
And Mayor, can I ask you to make an effort to speak into the mic? Some people have complained that they don't hear some.
Yes, I will do that. I will try. Remind me if I don't. All right, so first on before we get into the agenda, I just want to thank staff and everybody who participated in putting together yesterday's annual picnic. It was great. Everybody, in my view, had a good time, and I appreciate it. And a happy birthday to Mars Broad, happy 80th birthday. And we thank him and his family for their underwriting the event, and look forward to seeing him soon. And here we go. We're going to start off with requests for withdrawals, deferments, and future agenda items. Anybody?
Yeah, I have. I just want to pull number 3A. Actually, let me see if I get revised here. I'm not sure I'm on the same one yet.
It's a regular council meeting minutes of October 13th.
On that one, yeah, please. And also, I believe number 6, because I think we're going to want to discuss that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to pull 6 also, and number 4, please.
Yeah, so those will come out of the consent agenda. Anything else?
Are we going to pull committee reports, or is that just a report?
No, we're going to have, what's new on the agenda is that we're moving or council member reports back to the beginning of the agenda, but we're limiting ourselves to 2 minutes. So, got to give a good summary of your activities for the last month, and committee reports are staying on the agenda.
No, but I mean, do we pull that at this point, or do we just discuss it later? Is that can be discussed?
No, as we get to the report, if there's anything you want to say, you're more than welcome, to say it.
No problem.
Okay, council reports. Kelly.
Good evening, everybody. And I, too, enjoyed the picnic very much, and much thanks to the Broad Foundation and to staff. Just about everybody in here I see had some part in it, and it was wonderful. I was scheduled to go to Tallahassee about 3 weeks ago for Legislative Action Days, and I apologize, but I was not able to go. It was a town-related reason, actually. Living next door to a construction site is new for me, and it's actually quite educational. As uncomfortable and unpleasant as it can be, it's sort of like getting Bay Harbor Construction 101, and I know a lot of people in this room have already been through that, so I completely and sincerely commiserate, and I'm getting to know better understanding. One of the things that happened actually involved a tree on the property line, and I wasn't quite sure at the time. We see at the P&Z meeting, there's a tree plan and a landscape plan that goes along with the planning and zoning project that gets approved, and I've heard many times the developers say things like, we're going to add this kind of shrub or tree to the existing trees. So what I didn't realize is that if you don't get one approved for removal, and later you would like to, you can either apply to the county and wait, or you can just do it and then take your punishment later by completing an after-the-fact tree removal. So I had about 3 weeks of learning about trees, and there was actually a time when I feared that some of the trees on our side of the property were going to be taken away, and I'm one of the few people in the building who can keep an eye on it. So learning about construction, demolition, trees, etc. in Bay Harbor kept me home from Tallahassee. But I have been participating in the Monday morning legislative phone calls and trying to keep up on that, and I trust that my 4 colleagues here are very diligent in Tallahassee, and we're picking up the slack as well as the lobbyist. So, thank you.
Thank you. Isaac?
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to make it to Tallahassee for Legislative Action Days. I met with several key legislators, including chairman and vice chairman of committees that actually have the power to grant our requests for water money, for other project money, and the meetings went very, very well. And I know that I was there with my colleague Josh, and it was an incredibly productive, more or less 48 hours. We went up and down the hallways of the Capitol, and we had very, very productive meetings there. So that's what I want to report.
Josh?
Okay. As you said, I also was at the Legislative Action Days. I was happy to go, see what we could do, see if we can try and get the state to give us a little more money this year. Hopefully we'll be successful. Obviously nothing is set in stone until the budget is finalized, but we gave it our best shot, and we're trying to see what we can get for the town. I followed it up as well with Dade Days, where both the vice mayor and mayor were there as well, and Ron as well. We went back and continued to lobby to try and get the town some more money, as well as met the other local legislators to try and see what we could do to help out the town. The Monday morning calls have been actually very good as far as Florida League of Cities. I can tell you, it gives an interesting perspective to see how the leagues, let's just say it's intense. Some of them were right and some of them were being, thwarted by the legislature this year, but we're trying to put our 2 cents in to see what we can do to help the town along those lines. The only other things I will say is, again, thank you for everybody who helped out with the picnic. It was great to see everybody there yesterday. And we did also miss one other happy birthday, Councilwoman Reed. Happy 2-day belated birthday.
Happy birthday.
Jordan?
I'll be brief. I want to thank everyone and staff for the picnic, including the Broad family, for their always generous annual donation. I attended the annual Day Days fly up to Tallahassee. More of the legislation I was working on along with our staff, including our town manager, hasn't been finalized yet, so I don't want to kind of talk too much about it until it's actually completed, but, something that will hopefully make our town residents very happy in the long future to come. But other than that, just want to wish everyone another good month. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief as well. I think that the trips to Tallahassee are actually useful. I was up there in March, and also for Day Days, because the FaceTime is really good. You see so many different organizations, not just legislators or, council people from the various communities in the state of Florida, but, county officials, school board officials, and then, the realtors, the chiropractors, universities and so forth. So everybody's up there asking for money, and it's important that your face be seen, that you have the opportunity to meet with legislators. We were very successful last year, and hopefully, we will be successful this year. And even just going up and thanking the legislators who supported us last year, I think is very beneficial, and they certainly appreciate it. And that's it. Town manager?
I have a couple of items that you'd like.
I have a couple of items I'd like to update you on. First of all is the construction along Kane Concourse. They're going to start paving on the home island starting tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. That'll be after the school rush. I'm letting them go to 7 p.m. so that the project will be finished in 3 days instead of 7 days. So they're going to work to 7 p.m. All the residents that are directly affected that are on 96th Street on the home island have been notified, literally, knock on the door, flyers, email, and we've done a lot of notice ourselves with signboards and on our website to get that out. Additionally, I know there's been a lot of concern on the corners of the commercial island. They're 90% complete, and one of the biggest things that they were attacking was the electronic looping system for the traffic lights, which, I don't know if you remember, back during community enhancements, I made the decision not to take that asphalting all the way to the corner, which would have been nicer, but we would have had to replace the loops. Each one of those loops on each side of the street costs $10,000. So when you run it down the street, it gets quite expensive. They're doing that now, and they'll be replacing all the loops, as well as the button that you push to stop the light to let you walk across. You might have also noticed that we haven't really been replacing the flowers also. During the construction, we were told that they're all going to be disturbing the flower beds, the irrigation, and some shrubbery, which is all going to be replaced. And I really didn't think it was smart just to put in flowers and have them rip right back out again. And Brookman will be doing that very shortly. The two major things that are going to occur tomorrow, hopefully, is they'll be finishing the mast arm construction. That is the light control device that goes over King Concourse. That was struck by a dump truck a couple of years ago. They straightened it out, but they're putting in a new mast arm there, and the thing that holds it in was being redone. They ran into a problem. They would have had it done last week, but the hole kept filling up with sand, so they had to make some adjustments. So hopefully they'll be finishing that, and the one right down the block here on Bay Harbor Terrace, right across from Prashnik's Jewelry. Then hopefully it'll be a one-day installation. The sidewalk will remain open. They're going to work from the street, and then we'll have police officers assigned to do traffic control.
Wait, Ron, that huge concrete pad that they built?
Yes, that's not it, just so you know, because they kept losing, the sand kept backfilling in, they filled it with they call a flowable fill, which is it's a strength, it's a lightweight concrete, and now they're going to re-drill that into that pad. That pad won't be, obviously it's not going to be sticking up like that. It'll be lower, and it'll be pavers all around it, so it'll be a much lower profile. But right now, that they needed to do that just to stabilize it and to get that done. So that's what you saw. I know it looks gigantic.
Wait, that's on the
It's right across, it's West Bay Harbor Drive and King Concourse on the northwest side of the street.
corner.
Yeah.
They've had just to interrupt for a moment, that sidewalk and the bridge over there, walkway closed for like 5 days now, and, they weren't working all weekend. It seems that, they could manage the construction side a bit better to keep that open, on weekends when they're not working.
On both sides?
Well, on that side where they were doing the mast arm work was closed.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. When you said the bridge, I'm thinking...
No, I'm just talking about between the east and the west islands. I mean, I didn't see any reason to keep that closed for days at a time when there's nobody out there working. And
Right.
we've seen that in a couple of the other,
We stopped them.
I know.
We actually stopped them because of the holiday, and, we just said, don't,
That's right.
wait till...
They should keep the sidewalk open if they're not working.
I agree. We've had our issues sometimes with the traffic control. We were requested by FDOT to do extensive traffic control on the bridge, on the ICW, and their contractors don't have to, seem to have to do the same jumping through the hoops that we had to. 98th Street Park. We are closing the park for 4 days. It's been noticed. We have signs there, and it's been on our website. We're reinstalling or redoing the water controllers and the valve manifolds, the valves that supply water to the splash pad. We had to do some repairs to the drainage. The splash pad is made of a rubber surface, and there wasn't enough holes in it to let the water sufficiently drain down into the drainage basins. So what we were having was like a pond effect out there. And with the amount of use it was getting right off the bat, it was clear something was not correct. So that issue has been changed. But the other item was because the water filled up, it would flood into where we had the controller. So the controller actually is going to be moved above ground in a special cabinet. It's going to be much more target hardened, for lack of a better word. We found that a lot of the kids like to stand on the one that was lower to the surface, and so it'll be much more safe, and it'll be above ground, and we should be fine with that. A couple other things about the 98th Street Park. It has been getting an extremely heavy usage, which is a good thing. We have, during the time it'll be closed, we have turf maintenance that we want to do. We'll be bringing up some low spots where we have it, changing some irrigation heads, some plantings that have gone on. We've seen, some children tend to run through it and sometimes even pull them out for some reason. We also it was noticed that some people are throwing things down in the storm drainage open basins. We corrected that the day after. Actually, it was Josh brought it to my attention.
we covered that, just as we covered the dog park, so you can't throw things down in there, because eventually that will block the drainage from perking the water going down. The other issue we've had is the children sometimes like to climb on things and get into things that normally, we've never had an issue at the Tot Lot, at 92nd Street. We've had irrigation heads taken apart. We've had some of the control wires pulled out, literally out of the ground. So we're replacing valve box covers with lockable ones. Some of the controllers that are above ground, we're going to put, the screen around it, or the fencing around it. That'll be going in, because the kids actually have gotten up and jumping on it. Some of them use it to jump over the fence when a ball goes over the fence. So, not, to be expected, I guess. So, the thing I just want you to know, the grass is taking a beating. So even though it's going to be closed for a few days, and we're going to be, we're already fertilizing and irrigating, it's getting all the special attention it can, but the feet traffic is tough on the grass. So just to let you know, we're going to do our best to bring it back to that green, but it could be difficult. What else? Shade trees. We're looking at 3 very fast-growing shade trees other than oaks that'll give us much more of a quick canopy. We talked with Brookman about it, so what's there now is going to be even added 2 more to put some more shade out there.
Indigenous trees?
Indigenous, yes, absolutely. What other thing? Just so people know that, I know we spoke about Tallahassee.
Sorry, about in the dog park, the little water feature in
Okay. The Tallahassee, we spoke about going up there. I don't know if everybody knows. I'm sure everybody knows. We got $1.5 million last year, which is really good for the town. This year, the water project we were talking about is lining the sewer manholes, which are already lined, but over time, even that lining degrades, and it's particularly where it's at the bottom of the manhole. And for us, any water that comes into the manhole that has to be treated down in Miami Beach or ultimately down in Virginia Key, we pay for. So we were asking for $178,000 to be matched by us, and, one of the things that everybody said was, you guys aren't being greedy, you're putting money up. Everybody wanted to help us, so hopefully that'll come through. That's it.
All right, thank you. Town Attorney?
Just want to report, and I'll let Frank report. It's just an update on the Fong matter. Frank, go ahead.
Well, we were again successful getting another court order against them. Sorry. We were again successful in getting another order against Fong, and requiring them to, one, delist their Airbnb rental of both their mobile home, RV, and their Florida room. Those have been removed. They also had a time period in which, as of today, that their property had to be brought up to code. We have Evelyn going out there tomorrow to make sure it is. They've professed that they're up to code, and we'll see. And if they're not, this judge will be all too welcoming to whatever we want, as Ron will tell you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to public comment. Remember, that's 3 minutes. J.C. will start the clock. Mrs. Newhart, you didn't put your name, but since it says 1060 KC, I assume that's you.
Mrs. Newhart, 1060 Kane Concord. Okay, next Tuesday is the town's annual election, where we have 3 new candidates fighting an uphill battle for possibly only one of the 3 open seats due to a resignation. Unlike the majority of other municipalities and the United States presidential elections, our town council, including our 20-year incumbent and 16-year incumbent, with their appointed town staff, appear to be very happy, staying in office forever, and therefore, unless mandatory, do not feel term limits are necessary. I wouldn't mind keeping these happy 20 and 16-year incumbents in office for many more years, except for this ongoing destruction of our town. 1. How is it possible for elected council members and their appointed town staff to increase the height limit of buildings from 75 feet to 125 feet and still be able, with the help of our town attorney, to ignore, even with a lawsuit, the voter referendum that had limited heights to 75 feet? How were elected council members and their appointed town staff involved in a possible controversial deal when transferring of private TDRs between a former mayor's building with developers and upfront money? $540,000 for 8 TDRs and $80,000 for 2 TDRs. Why was ethics involved and a fine levied? Can Bay Harbor Islands afford council members and appointed town staff that possibly have no regard for citizens or the law? Who profits when elected council members and their appointed town staff almost every month approve upzoning and increasing tremendously the value of developers' properties? Unlike other municipalities, what happened to compensating when they encroach and inconvenience existing town residents? 4. How do we allow elected council members and their appointed town staff to overlook town bylaws? Section 5.5H5 of watering during demolition. Why have town residents considered a class action suit for negligence, town and not enforcing developers to water down possible dust clouds of asbestos and their contaminants, and have been making residents very sick? Perhaps if elected members and their appointed staff hadn't been in office so long, taxpayers' dollars would not have had to finance questionable construction projects, such as the 98th Street Park, the failed parking garage, and the so-called building of a community center. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Maya?
Victor Maya, 1155 103rd Street. Last year, this council, under the cover of the flimsiest of legal reasoning, refused to listen to an appeal from a longtime Haitian-American service provider, Edwin's Jean. Both you, Mr. Mayor, and you, Mr. Fuller, have legal degrees, yet you fail to question the opinion issued from Mr. Simone, interpreting county code and applying it to this town. This was a grave injustice born of political expedience, and you all should be ashamed of yourselves. And since then, no one sitting on this council has proposed to correct this injustice from happening again. The politics behind the decision to change the tennis center provider was appalling. Equally appalling is what's happening during this year's election cycle. I believe there have been improper intimidation tactics from our vice mayor in the form of an email to a candidate questioning the legality of a meet and greet for a couple of candidates to a function on private property. Oddly, that email was sent to only one candidate, not both of them. Then, the police were called to prevent a campaign supporter from going through a neighborhood to garner support for his candidate, an action protected by our First Amendment. Did you call the police, Mr. Vice Mayor? Or did you have somebody call the police, Mr. Vice Mayor? Finally, there is no question you used your son in this photo during the dedication ceremony of our new park. And your son is holding a Vote for Salver campaign sticker. You know, oddly enough, during that entire ceremony, you chose to distance yourself from the rest of your council. You did not sit up there with them during the ceremony. Instead, you chose to sit on the side, with your family. Then you use your son in this picture, and you use him in a second picture at the ribbon cutting ceremony as well. I don't know if Mr. Salver approved, this using of your son to hold his campaign literature in the picture. But then again, I don't know what Mr. Salver's position is on photographs, as he readily donned a construction helmet and picked up a shovel to sit with the developers of the O condominiums in a groundbreaking ceremony photograph. All of this is just appalling. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have to say something.
Go ahead.
You know, I have to say something, Mr. Maya. I find your comments not only grossly wrong and inaccurate, but disgusting. You know, I mean, my son was 4 years old when that picture was taken, and to imply that I would use my own child for some petty political picture is just not only incorrect and wrong, but shows how low politics has gone in this town. You know, my 4-year-old picked up the piece of, you know, the piece of paper, and I'm going to ask the town manager to clarify what happened, because I had absolutely 100% nothing to do with that picture getting in the town newsletter, and I welcome anyone that challenges that to you know, to ask staff as to how that actually happened, because I had nothing to do with it. And for the record, I have no knowledge at all about any police officer getting called for any reason related to the election, and I had absolutely 100% nothing to do with it. And again, to imply such things in an open meeting, I wouldn't say it. Well, let's just say that you're pushing the legal limits. But I will ask the manager if you can explain how that came to be, because, and say for the record if I had anything to do with it.
All the pictures at that time were spontaneous. They were, at that time, we were dedicating the plaque, and everybody walked over. And actually, I was trying to get everybody to walk back, and it was too late. Everybody lined up to go into the park. Clearly, I can't speak to, you know, what Josh picked up off the ground.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't staged. I mean, it was just very, you know, off the, you know.
Did I have any knowledge of the picture being put in the newsletter? Did I ever see the newsletter? Did I ever? Exactly. And also to make any type of reference as to why I wasn't seen with my council members, because I have 3 children, and my oldest is, like I said, at the time was 4 years old, and I had a new baby, and my responsibility is to my family first. So to imply that anything comes before my family first would be not true. My family comes first, and my position is next to my wife and my children, and that's where I was during the dedication, not in front of you know, behind the mayor and the other members of the council. And to be honest, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Thank you.
I have a comment on the subject since it's opened up, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
As a retired law enforcement officer, I was appalled, actually, that event was turned into any kind of a campaign opportunity, Isaac. And I wasn't going to say anything. I really didn't want to get involved. And it wasn't until I saw this picture, and it wasn't just an offhand. Anybody can get a picture of it in the newsletter. It wasn't offhand. And whoever's responsible for that is secondary to the fact that you should not have been campaigning at an event where a park was dedicated to a fallen officer. I've lost friends in law enforcement, and I've been to enough police funerals, and I was disgusted by it. So that would have prevented all of this, and it would have kept Jordan out of the spotlight. Thank you.
It's really just a matter of town staff making sure, you know, when we approve our newsletters, that there's no political items in it. And, you know, inadvertently, that's all. It's not.
And what
I think
about,
we're making more of this than it is. It's just inadvertently not editing. It could have been photoshopped.
what about the canvassing in town? I think maybe at a future meeting, we should have a discussion about that. You know, is it okay to walk?
We don't limit that. I think that was a residential call that somebody was knocking on the door. The officer in question just responded it as they would to any resident calling. We don't allow it, but political speech, obviously, and political flyers are allowed, and the officer was told, and it was corrected immediately. So nobody, within minutes.
And then I mentioned it when somebody mentioned it to me, I mentioned it to the chief, and he made calls to the officer.
It's odd. I've lived here 16 years, and I've campaigned once for myself and a few other times, and I've been in buildings with permission, hoping to find some, walking the West Island. Some people love it. They thank you for coming. Other people can't stand it. I'm not a fan of it in my building myself, but maybe we should have that discussion after this election and maybe just try to, establish some ground rules within our culture of campaigning.
I mean, you can feel free to put anything on the agenda, but I mean, people have the right to campaign. I'm not sure what kind of ground rules. There's no accounting for, I have no idea who called the police or who was upset about somebody coming onto their property with campaign literature, but, we all made it clear yesterday that any candidate is entitled to campaign. Listen, I don't want to belabor this. I walked over to somebody yesterday and they said, "Get away from me." I walked away, I mean, not everybody likes everybody, and that's it. So you respect it. It's fine, We do the best we can in terms of campaigning. All right, let's get...
I'm going to just very, very, very briefly respond the fact that the event was a dedication of a park. Period. It was the dedication of a park. It happens to be that, we dedicated it in honor and the memory of a fallen officer, which I respect and supported 100%. And, I have no regrets, nor do I have any qualms about, what took place. It was a town event where people were gathering, and I thought my actions were 100% appropriate. And the fact that you were disgusted by it really doesn't affect me.
I know that. But you were the only candidate.
I happen to believe in the First Amendment.
All right, we can discuss it again later if you want, but let's get back to good and welfare.
Yeah, and there's good taste, and not.
Kathleen Kennedy.
My name is Kathleen Kennedy. I'm at 9721 East Bay Harbor Drive. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your professionalism throughout your whole year as the mayor. I really appreciate it. I have a couple of things. The fact that this was put into this picture of Mr. Salva was put into the newswave at taxpayers' expense is very insulting. I, as the mother of a police officer, okay? And this is supposed to be for a fallen police officer, and you're up there advertising a candidate who has cost this town a lot of money, including my religion. I'm sorry. It was a bad time. It was not in good judgment. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go any further on that, but it was bad taste. Jordan, the meet and greet flyer that I put out was mirrored after your flyer. I copied it verbatim. Solange and my wonderful friend, Francisco Temperano. And then you had the nerve to say that it was illegal. Really? I tried to get this meet and greet in this room that we're talking about. The mayor is proof of that. The council, the administration is proof of that. I tried to get it into the park. For some reason, it just didn't happen. So guess what? I had to do it at the Dexter. And guess what? I didn't get the greatest turnout because somebody was going behind me to take them down. And God only knows who that was. Okay? Now, in walking through the parks, walking through the condominiums, I'm hearing a lot of things from the elderly, which is my concern, has always been. Meals on Wheels. We have elderly people that need help, and I don't see any of you addressing any of this about our elderly. Jordan, for 1 year, you've been walking around this town promoting yourself, talking about the wonderful things we're doing. I see advertisement about making this town the little town that it's supposed to be, a lot of BS. It's not true. We need things for the elderly here, Jordan, and I want that as a priority of yours, as you going around this town saying that we're trying to close the parks down. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. Okay? We need to have something for our children. I have been in that park every day, watching the twigs, watching the flooding. None of you have been there to see it. The administration is addressing it. This was your project. And I don't know if you've been down there to see them poor little kids jumping over the bushes to get on the twigs, scratching their legs. Nobody's taking care of our children here. The teenagers, nobody's caring about them, they need skateboards. they need a place to go and create something for them. I don't see that on your agenda. But yet you intimidate our candidates that are trying to make progress here.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you become the mayor again, please.
It's not up to me. Susan Luck, next, please.
Good evening, Susan Luck, 10180 West Bay Harbor Drive. We were asked to kind of be vigilant around the community during demolition. I know it's on the agenda tonight, and the Environmental Committee is going to speak to that. I'm just here to say that because of my presence in the community, many people, from the elderly to moms with children, have approached me, called me, and by word of mouth talked about the increase in respiratory problems, asthma, etc., that's on this island due to the demolition. I just want to again reiterate that and make everyone cognizant of it, especially as you go through and read on second reading the demolition ordinance tonight. And in the public health realm, and I did write a letter, an email to Marlene this morning, I meant to do it a week ago, about a Porto-San potty sitting on a demolition property that has long had its gates closed and maybe except for a little bit of rubble still sitting there. And I asked the question, do we know if that was ever emptied as it's sitting? Now, it might sound a little gross, and it certainly is if you're walking by. We're worried about rats, and since I'm speaking to the fact that we only have one code enforcement person, I think it behooves us to think about why don't we have a second one with 36 demolition projects on the books and construction coming in, and then there's all the other issues that still exist in our buildings on both islands. So I do hope that we can find out, and the question that Marlene brought up is, if the permit is still open for construction, how long can that Porto-San potty sit there? I mean, this is a real question, because they're going to be on all the properties, they might have waste inside of them, and it's really a public health issue. I was up here with Paul Basil a couple of weeks, or the last town council meeting, to report on a event that I went to, actually a conference on 1 million trees for Miami-Dade, and that there were 16 municipalities in Miami-Dade that had bought in, paid something from the town so that they could be part of it to replace and enhance our community, every empty space possible. I don't see it on this agenda, and I again would like to ask the council to put it on the agenda, look at the materials that we handed out, and think about joining the rest of our local municipalities in really thinking about greening our community. As you can see, with every demolition that's gone on, it has been absolutely decimated of trees. Yes, they're going to be replaced. Yes, there's supposed to be an inventory. They will be baby trees. It might take 20 years for them to grow back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marlene, can you put it on the agenda for next month, please?
Yeah, just so that you know, the particular site that Susan was talking about, they're almost done. I didn't know which one because there's a couple on 102nd Street, so I had to go find out. And the porta potty is scheduled to be removed tomorrow or the next day. So, and they do empty them on a regular basis.
Ken Eskin?
Ken Eskin, 1310 99th Street. An easy one, just a request for council to consider, now that I have my new vehicle, which is now a bicycle, I'm riding around the island. I would like you to think about getting a bike rack for Town Hall and a bike rack for 98th Street. I've been spending a lot of time there. You see the kids, the bikes are strewn all over, and I've seen on a couple of times the kids fall over them. So in order to save ourselves from a lawsuit and just keep things tidy, at least in those two places, I'd like to see the bike racks.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Ken, just so you know, we did, I left it off the report, we ordered a bike rack for 98th Street Park.
We spoke about that the first day it was open, I just wanted to follow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Linda Zilber?
Linda Silver, 1231 85th Street. I'm not here with a complaint. Some of you had mentioned at one of the meetings that the synchronization of the lights were not working. Please give me exactly what lights they are, because I've already gotten the money appropriated to take care of it.
Great, thank you so much. It's good news. I have no other requests for good and welfare. Is there anybody who wanted to speak on good and welfare who is not? Seeing none, we will move on to committee reports. Is there, did you want to? I'm sorry, please come up. We have these forms in the back. I don't know if I missed you, but after you speak, if you would fill it out. Go ahead, just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
Gil Baker, 1001 91st Street.
Oh, I do have your number in the wrong order. Go ahead, thank you.
I wanted to address, your consideration of prohibiting construction on Saturday. It's, with all the construction projects we have, the residents, we only get 1 day of respite from construction, which is Sunday.
I would only interrupt you to say that you'll have the opportunity to speak to that item when it comes up on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
The good and welfare is just for items that are not on the agenda.
I didn't realize that.
That's right, but thank you.
So I'll speak later.
We'll call you back up on that item. Thank you very much. Committee reports, Parks and Recreation. We have a representative.
No, there are two items on there. The first item
All right.
is a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Committee asking the town council to consider hosting a Veterans Day Parade in conjunction with Ruth K. Broad, Bay Harbor K-8. Originally, the idea was, their request was for a Memorial Day. However, the school with exams, and I think that's towards the end of the school year, they have some class trips, and the school says, our participation would be extremely limited, if any at all. So then the school came to the suggestion as Veterans Day, and the committee liked the idea and it's just asking for council support. And if that happens, we'll do properly budget for it, like I wrote in the backup, and do the research. And we can reach out to Bal Harbor and search that, see if we can do something.
Yeah, a good recommendation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right.
Thank
you.
Great. If you guys, you'll see that in the upcoming budget. The second item is a recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Committee asking the town council to consider installing 4 exercise stations in the North Passive Park. This came as a request, I think Vice Mayor Leonard, he brought that up at a request of one of our residents at Kenneskin. And the committee, the council deferred it to committee. Committee met, looked at some different options. I brought them some options, but the consensus, and you have it in your backup there, what the estimate would be, more or less, to install it. The idea is not to install them all around the park. If not in one area, it would be on the eastern portion of the North Passive Park, screened in with landscaping. Obviously, proper walkways and proper installation would be done. And those are the estimates that, construction estimates that it would cost.
I like to put it in for next year's budget, the same thing.
For the
following budget.
Yeah. I think the total would be something.
10 to 15.
10 to 15,000.
My only issue on it, though, is before I would support I want to see some kind of just sketch about what it would look, not just the picture of North Miami.
Absolutely.
The design here is going to be key as to whether or not I support it.
My idea, and the equipment that they use in North Miami was some of the equipment that we were looking at, and I want to see if we can piggyback off of their contract, if I can. The idea was to install something similar to that. That area, I'll get a sketch. We'll get a sketch, and I'll show it to you how it would work in the existing conditions in the existing area. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, but putting in the budget...
It would be something very similar to that.
Yeah, but putting in the budget for, saying you approve, staff putting in the budget doesn't actually get it approved, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to come back, again,
I'm just saying that when it comes
back,
you have some kind of...
Of course,
Not always.
Before I continue doing it, I wanted to make sure you guys are on board, and then I'll bring additional information as far as the budget is concerned.
The North Passive Park is on the West Island, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate to engage all the surrounding homes on the West Island, send them a card or something like that, perhaps have a workshop on it, because, the folks that live around the passive parks, really consider the passive parks as passive parks and enjoy them as passive parks, purely as passive parks. I know that there had been debate in my 16 years on the council about having basketball courts put there or other types of more active components or elements, in the parks, and there has been some pushback from the surrounding residents, and the folks that have their passive parks typically like the parks passive.
And I can absolutely canvass the area, and speak to...
May I address that?
1 second, Ken, 1 second. I also heard, though, that, I've seen a couple of parties, like, I guess we rent out the passive parks
Yeah,
sometimes
passive parks are rented
for parties. And also, I know that on the south side, at least I've heard, I haven't seen it, but that sometimes, on weekend mornings, some of the families get together and they play soccer and do other things over there.
You can see that there's some active activities going on there because they have the grasses.
Right, but that's why I wanted to see the design. I didn't want to just see the picture of North Miami with that. I want to be...
I'll suggest instructions, and I'll show you where exactly I want to put it. I have no problem with that.
Right, this is just instruction to staff to go forward and then come back.
If you guys weren't in favor, that's the end of it. But if you guys want to pursue it, I will absolutely continue.
Right.
Yeah.
Since Councilman Salva had brought that very comment up previously, before we went further with this, I spoke to Michael Whittles, who's, I think, the biggest owner over there. I spoke to Jay Meiselman. I spoke to Dr. Raddick. I've spoken to quite a few people over there, and they all agreed to it, as long as we keep it in one place. So all of those people who were directly the closest to it all agreed to it already. As long as the only thing they did not want the equipment all over the entire park. They didn't want to take any space. In other words, if the kids want to play in it, they still have their full open space. That's why this is only in one spot. So I did address Mr. Salva's comments from before.
Thank you. And other committee reports, Vincent Martino, I know that you have a report. Is that Environmental Committee, I believe? It's not on here. No, but basically we'll just use this time, even if it's not specifically on here, just to ask any committees if they wish to report. So go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. First off, yesterday's picnic, we passed out 4 out of the 6 beautification awards. The inaugural year that we did that, we had 4 of the participants show up of the 6, and the other 2 awards I'll bring and give to the, I'll leave with Vicki Matola so she can give the awards to the recipients. They were very happy to receive them. We had a lot of people come by the table and looked at the awards and wanted to know what they were, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a good opportunity to promote various homes, single-family and multi-families in the area, so in the town. So I hope we do it again next year. So thanks for your support on that. Now to our report. First, I'm going to pose this as a question because I'm not really sure how to address it. But at the April 6th EIC meeting, the following questions were asked by concerned citizens and committee members.
Excuse me, which meeting?
At the Environmental Impact Committee, on April 6th. With regards to an ordinance, the town already has a construction ordinance 5.5. We understand that a proposed new ordinance 5.51 is to be voted on this evening. Our question or concern is, will the new ordinance supersede the existing ordinance 5.5? Ordinance 5.5 is thorough, as it was crafted several years ago by EIC, and we would like clarification on this. I know this is coming up later in the meeting, but is this something we could talk about now, or do we wait until Mr. Miller's up? I think it's item number 10.
I think it's very simple. 5.5 is construction site operations. 5.5.1 is demolition sites. One has nothing to do with the other.
Is that, okay? All right. Because we weren't sure at the meeting. Okay. All right.
With regards to, going forward, with regards to future demolition, we strongly urge that the council to require developers or property owners to pay for asbestos testing, soil testing, lead testing on all sites that are scheduled to be demolished. The town should not bear the financial responsibility for these tests. In addition, all tests should be conducted by multiple independent agencies to assure that the results will be beyond dispute. There's so much demolition scheduled on our island, and residents are at risk if toxins are dispersed into the air. So we would like you to consider that. Number 2, all residents within a 2 to 3 block radius of a scheduled demolition site should be notified by snail mail, email, if available, and telephone calls prior to the date of demolition. Signs should also be posted on the construction fence sites stating the scheduled demolition date or dates. We feel that this will give residents closest to these sites an opportunity to prepare their homes, especially those residents with respiratory conditions. Again, the town should not have to bear the burden of costs associated with these actions, mailing, postage, etc. Next, Environmental Committee strongly supports the no demolition, no construction work on Saturdays ordinance before you tonight. In addition to the noise, there have been multiple times at numerous sites when construction debris is not watered down as per ordinance, and little if any oversight can take place over the weekend, as code enforcement only works every other Saturday. Please vote for this ordinance. And finally, we also ask the council to strongly consider hiring another code enforcement officer. Again, with all the construction planned, the town would clearly benefit from another full-time official.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other committee reports? Okay. Thank you. Right, now we have the consent agenda with the Now, as I said, if there are any other committee reports, that's...
No, we
welcome.
already did the reports.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, it's consent agenda without item 3A, 4, and 6, which will be discussed
I'll move it.
separately. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes. Right now, let's talk about item 3A. Josh, I think you asked that be pulled.
There's a typo in 3A. If you go to page, I always wish this was a page number, but if you go on to where it talks about the consent agenda, next to last paragraph, it says that I made a correction on the July 22nd workshop minutes, and it says he stated that he was not in attendance. No, I made a correction that I was in attendance because I was omitted the first time, and then I said I was there. So you have to get rid of the word "not." That was the only change on that one.
Okay. So can we
Can
approve
we
those
have a
minutes?
vote on that with the change?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes. Item, I'm sorry, we'll come back to Item 4. This is an approval of a resolution requested by Councilmember Reed to waive building department permit fees as an incentive to residents who wish to upgrade their existing windows, doors to hurricane impact resistant products. We had a brief discussion about this at the last council meeting. Who asked, Jordan, did you ask to pull it?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And then, why don't you speak, and then Kelly can speak, and anybody else who wants to speak.
Yeah, I don't have a particular issue with it. It's just that, at the last meeting, I tried to make it a point that we offset the difference in the budget because, the building department specifically has to be revenue neutral. You can't make money legally from that department, so it has to be neutral. So if you're going to offset it by $10,000, then we have to make sure we offset the budget appropriately. So I just want to make sure that when we pass this, that the building department is going to cut $10,000 off, whatever they're going to be spending, so that way the budget is reflective, so that way we don't get into trouble. So that's my only concern, and it's the same concern I had last month.
Okay. All right.
No further
All right.
comment?
Yeah.
We have some public comment. Francis Newhut?
Francis Newhut, 9920 West Broadview Drive. By council approving waiving this building permit fee for windows and doors may also make it easier for the contractor to put Bay Harbor Island homeowners at risk. I'm an experienced person. I've done a lot of hurricane windows lately, and that's why I'm doing this. When an applicant pays this particular minimal fee, by the way, there is also simultaneously a paper trail that a permit application was also processed and recorded at the town's building department. The homeowner applicant would be less at risk if there was this guarantee that the contractor paid this particular minimal building permit fee, showing on record that a permit application was submitted, reviewed, and recorded at the town's building department as follows. 1, a licensed contractor carries liability and workers' compensation coverage. Windows and doors met the Florida Building Code specifications and product approval. And 3, letter of approval from the condo association, indicating the windows match the existing structure. Due to an understaffed code compliance and building department, the town may possibly have been overlooking the negligence of contractors not being recorded as pulling a permit application for hurricane windows and doors at the town's building department, nor paying this particular minimal fee. And that was shown on the county scope report, which Marlene had given me. For residents' protection, when there is a possibility during hurricane season that your new installed hurricane windows and doors blow out, or the contractor did shabby work, you can be sure that your insurance company will be calling the town's building department to make sure that they have liability insurance as well. When I discussed the county scope report, these are all the building permits for the last year up until March of 2015, who pulled building permits. And what I note on one example, unfortunately, is the condo that the vice mayor and our town manager lives in. And I only see 2 building permits pulled. One of them was yours, Ron. And there are quite a few now that are being built, and they're not conforming either. So I think it's very important to pay this minimal fee, because you have the protection. Might not be that much, I mean, there's not much code compliance going on, but at least you know that it's being recorded, so your insurance company, if anything goes wrong, is protecting you at the town building department. Thank you.
Ms. Newhook, for this clarification,
It's my understanding that the only thing that's being waived is the fee. You still have to apply for a permit, and the process is the same. You're just not paying the fee. Everything else that you mentioned would continue.
But what I'm trying to tell you is that we are very limited now on code compliance personnel going out there to check that these contractors went to the building department and pulled an application permit. When you have that little fee, it's on record at the town, and that way they know that they pulled a permit application.
Thank you.
And Marlene, who is the code compliance director, I'm telling you now, I have seen many, many buildings without permits, and they're doing it right now, and you probably know some of the contractors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just, as you said, that one fee, but there are other fees that are also processed, so it's not like you're going to walk in and pull a permit and get, it's not going to cost you anything. There is some money generated. The fee is just one part of it.
I'd like to move, if there's no more...
Just one comment is, just so everyone understands the evolution of this is one of many propositions that I hope to make, a little bit at a time, so that we can improve the existing buildings. We have a lot of new construction. This doesn't apply to any new buildings. And we have to do something, some kind of incentive. It's small, and I've been asking Dale Lee, our building director, what do you think? We brainstormed, and, he thought this was a feasible idea. So it's little incremental steps, just so that it encourages people with existing buildings, to improve. And really, for them, it's a win-win, because they're going to save on their insurance, on energy costs, and hopefully it'll be good for all of us. So that was the intention.
Thank you. Paul Rootfield, you wanted to address this?
And again, the process is exactly the same.
Same thing.
Yes,
Right.
as if you were paying for the permit.
Right, okay.
As several of you have already cited,
Name and address.
Paul Ruthfield, 1231 95th Street. As several of you already cited, the costs are very low. That's fine. The fees are very low. That's fine. If they're that low and that inconsequential, why shouldn't they pay them? That's number one. Number two, how about the people that went off on their own and paid the fees because they felt it was some improvement they wanted to do to their own property, and now you're going to say everybody that didn't do it before, but that does it now, isn't going to have to pay fees? Doesn't really sound right. I think it's unfair to do it that way. Number three, and I say it again, and I said it as one, the reality is, if it's a small fee, keep it. Don't give it back. Don't ruin the chance to have your own paper trail in your own town, keeping track of what's going on. If you don't have it, somebody's going to get hurt by it. Be it the town, be it the individual property owner. You can't hold somebody to something if you don't have the proper paper trail, and this is part of the proper paper trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Luck.
Susan Luck, 10180 West Bay Harbor Drive. Just to share that in my building, there's a couple of elderly people, and we've gotten together to talk about putting in hurricane windows because we don't have them. We've passed our 40-year inspection, and believe it or not, that fee may make the difference for some of the people that are on very tight budgets, whether or not they will do that. And in the end, it will, as was said, they'll save more money because it'll be more fuel efficient. The windows in our building rattle in the wind, the hot air comes in, et cetera. So I think that it's an incentive. It may be a nominal fee, but I think it might make a difference and incentivize some people to upgrade their units. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it might drown out some construction noise.
There you go.
I'll move it. It's been moved. Is there a
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Item number 6 is approval of a resolution requested by Councilmember Reed supporting the Miami-Dade County Sea Level Rise Task Force recommendations. This was before us, I think, a month or two ago, and we pulled it based on some comments, I think, from Mr. Telesco and other people. Did you, Jordan, or Josh?
I think we both did, but it's, I think the problem is, I definitely see the good intent of this, but, after Mr. Telesco's comments and was followed up by the town attorney, I have, some worries here about what it's going to end up doing as far as restricting our ability as a town to govern ourselves. And I wanted to hear what the rest of the council's thoughts were as essentially in reference to the town attorney's report.
Well, I always have concern when the town attorney tells us that a resolution or some other ordinance would restrict the town's ability to regulate land use within our municipality. We've talked about that with respect to other issues recently, so I do have a concern about that. I mean, this is a report and recommendations, if I can address this to you, Frank. I mean, this is not an ordinance being adopted by the county, isn't it? In reality, affect the town of Bay Harbor Islands.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, the resolution, as always, is a request for and has a cumulative effect with other municipalities like ourselves. And if there's enough support for it, usually the folks who have the vote for seeing a groundswell will usually vote that way. Obviously, while it's not binding, no one's forced to listen to it. Every voice counts.
All right, thank you for that.
Kelly?
Oh, I have a lot to say, but I don't know if you wanted to take public
No,
comment.
why don't you, we
Okay.
usually let the council members speak first and then public comment.
Okay, at the last meeting, Mr. Telesco came up, and he made a few points, and I thought it was prudent at the time to defer and look into some of the points that he made. So I made quite a few calls. I called Harvey Reuven. He was very nice. I called actually I met in person with two Miami Beach commissioners, because some of the commentary was something like Miami Beach is vehemently opposed to it. So when I asked the two commissioners, including Commissioner Grieco, who sponsored the two-day, 6th annual Southeast Florida Regional Climate Leadership Summit in October that I went to both days, I was kind of dumbfounded that they wouldn't support this. And he said, well, it's not that we don't support it, it's that what we're doing is so much above and beyond these recommendations that, we feel like we're setting the trend ourselves. So I ceased worrying about Miami Beach's concerns at the time. Then I inquired, there were some comments made by, that possibly Weiss-Serota felt like this was a terrible thing. So I asked some other towns who use Weiss-Serota as their primary attorneys. And I was forwarded a comment by Mitchell Bierman of Weiss-Serota. And he said, Assistant Attorney the Assistant Attorney called Tony Rescio to get his input after speaking to architect Tom Telesco. They'd had a conversation, but this was in no way an opinion, in other words. So Weiss-Serota was not taking ownership that they opined in any way other than a casual conversation. So at that point, I ceased to be concerned, about Weiss-Serota giving an official opinion. Then I noticed that in the March newsletter in Miami-Dade League of Cities, they unanimously approved supporting the same resolution. So I thought, I'm kind of surprised. So, Jordan, I don't know if you were present for that, or maybe you can enlighten us, but it was unanimously approved by the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
Including yourself?
Yeah, well, you have to understand that being on the executive board of the League of Cities is different than being on the council, that, responsibility to the council, on the council votes is for the town. As much as, my opinion is for Bay Harbor, you have to think on the macro sense for South Florida when we're looking at the League of Cities, not just Bay Harbor issues, although I do look out for Bay Harbor. When this item came up, I didn't think it was any issue in regards to the county, but in regards to our own specific belief as far as how we want to move forward, I do have some questions, and I wouldn't say they're, yes or no. I like to get some more information, because this is something that, we weren't part of this report. And, I didn't get a chance to speak, but, I do have some reservations for the betterment of the town as to how, moving forward, if they adopt this, and they put this in the comp plan for the county, what is going to be the impact for us in the future? For example, I'll give you a perfect example. What if, hypothetically, someone who currently has a building, wants to do some type of rehab? How is that going to be impacted because the building is it grandfathered in? Is it, that building's too big now, you can't do that level of work? We've had questions like this in the past in regards to acts of God, like hurricanes and whatnot. At what point can you rebuild your building? It's not just for new construction. So, as a member of this council, I do have some concerns moving forward. So, I'd like to get some more information from council, and I'd like to get some more information from the group that actually created this as to what potential impact this would mean for our home rule for our municipality.
I'm still in favor of it, obviously.
I would be interested in having a member of the task force come and talk to us about it. Yeah. So that we could ask questions, and get some more information. I would very much like to do that. I mean, I originally sponsored this, but, for consideration by the council, but I would like some more information. So if you could reach out to, one of the task force members.
I would be happy to.
All right.
And we'll defer it then again?
I would ask if we could.
I'm in favor of that, whatever makes y'all happy.
That makes more sense, so we can get a better idea.
I appreciate that.
Well, maybe not that, maybe.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we'll defer then, and hopefully at the next council meeting,
a member of the task force would be able to talk to us. Tom Telesco, you had signed up to speak about this?
Yes.
Sure, please.
I guess nobody hired Royce Sirota.
Can't hear you.
I guess nobody hired Royce Sirota. Tony Ruscio will not back off of what he said to me, number one. Number two, I'm working with Michael Grieco on a project at the Ritz-Carlton. I'll speak to him in the morning, but you'll find that this is a total development killer, 100%. You can't do anything to encourage further population of the barrier islands, and that's a development. You can't even put a bedroom on the East Island because it would encourage additional population.
I'm sorry, you said you couldn't put a bedroom?
A bedroom addition on.
A bedroom
On the
addition?
west, I think your point,
Yeah, because
you're
you're
in the West Island.
The West Island, I'm sorry, because you're making accommodations for a greater population. But more than that, it's going to kill the property values of everybody on the East Island. I know my property, a property similar to mine, was just sold for around $4.5 million. My property would be less than $1 million if it was undevelopable. So we'd lose about 75 to 80% of our value. And that's something that nobody's talking about, too. That's really all I want to say about it. Thank you.
Susan Luck?
Susan Luck, 10180 West Bay Harbor Drive. It sounds to me like it's the issue isn't really about rising seas and preservation of our community, and what's really the best approach for us environmentally. It sounds like it's more about development and how it might encroach on development of Bay Harbor. I can just remind you that when we went up to Tallahassee and the comp plan was changed, it was because the recommendation was 34 units per acre, because we were a barrier island and because we were endangered on many levels. That has since, with the TDRs and development, obviously been able to be reconfigured, renegotiated. But I think that it really warrants our community and our council, and especially if there's leadership in other areas of this community, including the League of Cities, that we really take heed and try to put aside development and property values and really look at the bigger picture and what our responsibility is moving forward and for us and for future generations. Thank you.
Michael, just a point of clarification, wasn't it the state of Florida that introduced the density averaging system in TDRs as a result of the fact that they would not approve an increase of density from 34 units per acre?
Right, and it's my, also, before you go into your comments, it was my recollection that when we went up to Tallahassee, which I was involved with as well, the comp plan was not changed, and that was the result. The comp plan was not changed. I think that we had submitted, the town had submitted for an increase in base density, and the comp plan was not changed.
Right.
It remained at 34 units per acre.
And my take on this is that we have a fixed number of dwelling units that could ever be built in our town, on the East Island and the West Island. That won't be affected by this resolution or sea level rise. That's a fixed number. We're nowhere near that number, right now. What will be affected if the water comes up, as we all know, the seawalls are very low. We took corrective action to encourage people to raise the seawall heights. Many people are doing that. You rebuilt much of the infrastructure. Lots of people are doing that. Miami Beach is spending millions of dollars with pumps and pipes. The older buildings from the 50s that are 6 feet above sea level with their slab, they could have trouble in the future, if the water comes up. All of the new construction that's 10 feet above sea level, 9 feet above sea level, probably will not experience any flooding whatsoever, maybe in a garage structure, so that's it. So, and we're not alone. It's the whole barrier island, So my take on it is, and I've talked to Frank about this and Marlene and Ron, is that we
our number of dwelling units and the people that are generated by whatever it is, 4,000 dwelling units was not going to change.
I have a quick question about encouraging the seawall level to come up,
Yep.
to raise the seawall. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it started on the West Island because it was creating a situation where with the seawalls lower, the yards were sloped, so they sort of started the trend to raise the seawall so they could have more of a usable yard space? Or was that a component for safety and sea level rise also?
Well, the original seawalls are, bizarrely enough, on Biscayne Bay, the West Island, are about 3 feet above sea level. I don't know why they would have ever done that. So the poor property owners, out of frustration, because the town for years wanted a uniform look, so you didn't have a sawtooth, one guy was higher, they started building retaining walls coming up the slope into their backyard to stop the wave action coming in. So the new height limit that we have over on that side is 6 feet. And it's 5.5 feet elsewhere in the community, which seems to be the common elevation that you see up and down Pompano Beach, Lighthouse Point, Fort Lauderdale. Everybody's kind of in that same ballpark right now. But yeah, it was out of frustration that people were coming to us repeatedly saying, "Can I raise the seawall?" And for years we said no, because we like this uniform, but we really have to allow people to do that. It's all of the property was conveyed right to the rear property line, and the seawall is actually on private property. In some cities, the seawall is in the waterway, so the public gets involved and you get more of a uniform type of thing. But when the individual property owners own it, we can only set the rules and hope that they do things.
Are you seeing a lot of that on the East Island as well? Riva or Monarch, are they raising them?
They're all raising they're all asking to raise the seawall.
Yeah, because I'm curious, myself, and I've been watching the development next door, and I asked, and they're not going to raise the sea level, which I think is unfortunate, raise a seawall, rather. But, I think a lot of us who plan to be here for a while would look into it, and I have a property very similar in size and vicinity to Mr. Telesco's, so, it's strange that we have different views on that, I guess.
Well, let me ask you a question, Mike. Correct me if I'm wrong, when we wrote that ordinance, if someone comes and they want to actually fix their seawall over 50%, they have to bring it up to the new standard. Correct. That's the threshold. So it's really not just whether or not they just want to, it's not like they're going to build something and they have to bring it up. They actually have to do some type of work on the seawall, and there's an actual percentage threshold, and the percentage is 50% and above. That's when 100% has to be comply with the new ordinance.
Yeah, the town did some type of study I was not involved with.
Right, when they did the levels.
Some years ago, and they assessed the integrity of the seawalls lot by lot.
Right.
And I know when we have our review meetings for redevelopment, Mr. Daniel pulls out his study and says, we looked at that 5 years ago, and your seawall was ready to fall down, so you need to rebuild it and build it higher.
Yeah, but also when they wrote that ordinance, they also put in legislation to make it mandatory that the runoff doesn't fall on your neighbors, and that's also a very important thing to mention, that as they're raising that seawall, that it's not going to impact their neighbor, and that's a really important thing to mention too. But it's a very interesting and very important discussion. But I think that proof in the pudding as far as what are we actually doing is a lot more important than what we think about a report, because when you talk about what can we do as a small municipality, having an ordinance and having an actual law that's going to impact people's lives for decades to come is actually really tangible. And we did this a long time ago, actually. This was done, maybe 2 years ago?
Yeah, for years in the state comprehensive plan and in the regional policy plan from the South Florida Regional Planning Council, that same policy that people are referring to now about restricting population in the coastal high hazard area, that's been there.
Right, I know.
The state's under Governor Scott, they've repealed a lot of this stuff, but a lot of the local plans still have that there.
Yeah, but my concern is, like, let's say, for example, someone has a house and they have a, they have a 2-2 and they want to make it a 3-bedroom, whatever. They want to, close in the garage or something like it's done, and that's done. And we've had people go to the planning and zoning board to request things like that. Well, how is that going to impact sea level rise by restricting someone from, right? And that's my whole point, is that you have to think with common sense to some extent. I don't see how that's going to benefit the community as far as sea level rise. But if we all of a sudden our hands are tied and we can't do something like that, that has nothing to do with a developer or a project. That has to do with quality of life to a property owner who pays taxes. And my real concern, and these were the concerns I had originally when we talked about, acts of God, is what happens to the building that has been around for 50 years, that clearly is below base flood elevation, and it gets damaged. At what point are they allowed, or in this case, at what point are they not allowed to rebuild? And that's always been my biggest concern, that somehow the county or someone comes in and says, I'm sorry, but, your building, you have to demolish your building. And, and there's a possibility that might happen. And that's actually one of my biggest concerns.
Thank you. I think somehow I let us get off topic here, but okay, let's go forward. All right, we're on to the ordinances on second reading section of the agenda. Ron?
8, approval of an ordinance on second reading amending the Town Code Section 13.13 to allow garage sales to take place outside a building and in an area not visible from the street.
An ordinance of the Town of Bay Harbor Island, Florida, amending Section 1313 regarding garage sales, providing penalties, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
Move it. Second, either way.
Second.
Discussion with council? Rock, paper, scissors. Marlene, would you call the, or poll the council, please?
Councilman Sauer.
4.
Councilmember Reed. 4. Councilmember Fuller.
4.
Vice Mayor Leonard.
4.
Mayor Yaffe.
4.
It's unanimous.
Item 9, approval of an ordinance on second reading amending the Town Code Section 23-12-15G1 to allow properties on the RM2 to construct pools, pool deck, and pool equipment on the street side on corner lots.
An ordinance of the Town of Bay Harbor Island, Florida, amending Section 23-12-15G 10 to allow properties in the RM2 multiple family district to construct pools, pool deck, and pool equipment on the street side yard on corner lots, providing for penalties, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
I'll move it.
Second.
Second.
Sure, the same time. Rock, paper, scissors, take turns.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Right,
Don't worry, she'll call me first for the program.
council comments or questions or?
Well, I'd just like to say that I would like to evaluate these as a variance and see them individually, and even at the first reading, I'd asked to see some kind of a sketch or diagram or example. So I'm not comfortable just approving this across the board, and I don't think there are that many properties that fit this characteristic, so I'd just like to see it. I'd like the neighbors to have the ability to come and weigh in on it, and just not approve it.
I understand that. On the West Island, when we originally this started on the West Island, it was by variance, and because it was so unobtrusive, and everybody who had the corners, most of the people who had the corners who wanted to do it, the council at the time felt it would be more appropriate to do it by ordinance rather than by variance, because it's expensive. The variance process could be expensive. But I respect what you have to say. I think that there are very few properties on the East Island that would be affected, and there is one existing, which is right, on East Bay Harbor Drive.
Across from me.
Across from you.
Well, that's the point.
So you can see how it,
Well, here's an interesting dynamic, is that on the West Island, when everything is at the same level, and you probably have, a fence or some bushes, that's a real sound barrier. When you're up a few floors, noise really does travel up. And the pool that's across the street from my building, it's set back quite a ways. That's why I was curious to see, that would be a good comparison. And maybe you want to defer it and go get a measurement on a building like that. But I can tell you, when I visit my friends on the 4th floor, the front of the building there, if there's a couple of kids playing, there's a considerable amount of noise that comes from there. So it's not totally unobtrusive.
Thank you. Francis Newhart?
Just so you know, the Summit is on the front yard setback.
No, I'm thinking of the next one on 98th Street,
No,
in
I'm
Town and
just
Country.
Right. No,
Summit has one in Town and Country.
Right, and I'm talking about the Summit, which is right here on 97th Street.
Yeah.
So there are two of them then, is that?
Yeah, at least. Mhm.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Newhart?
Francis Newhart, 9920 West Broadview Drive. I know we've already gone through all this, and it started out on the West Island where I live. It was the corner lots. They didn't have room in the back of their properties, therefore they put them on the corners. And I think that Kelly brought up some good points with that, with the levels and the noise. But also, this always happens. And every time a new ordinance like this comes up, I'm very leery about what's going on. Because what happens is, our town planner writes these ordinances, and what he does is he takes from one section. But you know what? There are other codes that address this as well. So you have this code section, which is in the RM2, which you're going to put the pool, but it's listed under section 23-12-15GX, which he added the language, he put in the line saying, and the RM2 multifamily district will also have that privilege of putting pools into the right-of-way.
Bless you.
But he doesn't bring out the fact that, and this I learned in the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, because somebody with a house was encroaching into the setbacks, and Marlene was nice enough to let us all know that in the residential, we don't have landscape requirements. Well, guess what? In the RM2 and in the RM1, you do have landscape requirements. And it specifically says in the RM2, under number 10, each plot shall provide for a minimum of 20% landscape green open space at ground level. How are you able to do that with the minimal amount of space you have already with these new developments, which we see on paper at these planning and zoning board meetings, to accommodate 20%? That's the minimal landscaping code. You are going below the minimal landscaping code by allowing these pools into the landscaping. So I object to this because you are not fully describing this ordinance to the public. It's very deceiving. It's very deceiving because I had to go look for it, and luckily in the Planning and Zoning Board, Marlene was nice enough to tell us you do have a landscaping requirement in the RM 1 and 2. So this should not be passed tonight. Thank you.
Marlene, I wasn't at that point.
Just to-
Could you clarify?
Just to clarify, I never said there was no landscape requirement for
Mr. Newhart, you had
single
your
family.
time.
For single family, there is, of course, also minimum, they have to adhere to the Miami-Dade County Landscape Code. With regards to the pool not being able to be built with a 20% landscaping, we just increased the size setbacks, so they got another 5 feet to put more landscaping. On the corner lots, the shapes are different, so they have more room. And in the cases that we've seen them, they certainly had to comply with the 20% and exceeded it, especially in that example that we saw.
I mean, I know on the existing properties in the West Island that have pools in the corners, every single one of them has a fence or a wall.
Right, they have
With
fences,
landscaping.
there's still a requirement to have a fence, to have a wall, to have some kind of a screening.
Mayor, I have
Mr.
a
Mayor,
quick question.
I'm sorry, I
Go ahead,
apologize. I forgot, after the consent agenda, the time limit is supposed to be 2 minutes.
2 minutes, you're right.
I've been at 3 minutes, so I do apologize. If you see the time change, it's nothing personal.
All right, start that on the next item, I guess.
Next item, I'll start at the next item.
I had heard a rumor, but I'm not sure if it's true, that the individual who approached you asking for this is perhaps now not interested in doing it, or?
You don't know? I don't know. I think what he said, if my recollection is correct, is that not Gabriel Boano, but somebody else had contacted me about it, because they had an inquiry from a prospective purchaser of a townhome about the possibility of having a pool. which would actually have been only for the one townhome, not for all of the townhomes. And I think that at the last meeting, Mr. Bolano said that that particular purchaser or prospective purchaser had backed out. But as I've also said many times at many meetings, that anybody who wants to ask me to put something on the agenda, I'm happy to do it for public discussion and council discussion. And clearly it doesn't only apply to one property on the East Island, it would apply to multiple properties, and the same rules would apply to all of the properties. So the fact that this particular prospective purchaser has changed his or her mind does not deter me from going forward with the discussion. But thank you for pointing that out. Doris Morano?
Evening, Doris Morano, 9400 East Bay Harbor Drive. You said it yourself, what's going to go up after you put the pools in are going to be fences, hedges, and it blocks our view. And when you walk down the street, that's what's happening with our buildings, and the pools will just be another additive on the corners where you don't see anything anymore. When you walk down the street, it's going to be very crowded, and it's not going to be like when we walk down the street now and it's open and it's airy, and you said it yourself. I mean, you're going to have to put up walls, that every pool is going to have fences, self-locking fences. I mean, you're ruining this town with all this development. You don't have to give them everything. I'm sure they can find a place, make a smaller building, and put the pool in a place where it's compatible.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. Hey, Marlene? You'll poll the council?
Councilmember Fuller.
For.
Councilmember Reed. Opposed. Councilmember Sauber.
For.
Vice Mayor Leonard.
For.
Mayor Yaffe.
For.
It passes.
Item 10, Ron?
Item 10, an ordinance, approval of an ordinance on second reading amending the town code to include new section 5-5.1 to regulate the demolition of structures.
An ordinance of the Town of Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, creating section 5.1, demolition of structures, providing for penalties, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
Move it.
Second.
I'd also note, if I could just, as we get into this discussion, this was in response to very legitimate complaints by people who live in this community that, that demolition was sort of out of control. The rodents, the dust, asbestos, and other items of concern, other issues of concern. And so, Ron, you had attempted, I think, to initiate a program to better manage these sites, and then recommended to us that, in order to enforce demolition, management of demolition sites, we need an ordinance. So that's why this is here. This is what the people asked for, and, and it's a very good thing.
Mayor, may I say that all of the comments that were made at the last meeting were incorporated into the ordinance for second reading, including several that Dale made. It has the location of temporary bathroom facilities. It has the gravel that he requested that be put there. It has the noticing, and it has a 5-day prior to the start of demolition. I think that one of the comments was that there was no number of dates included for notification. There is a requirement to post the application for permit at the site, and then to notify residents around the site within 5 days of demolition. I think I didn't miss anything else. Everything else was pretty much there. Oh, and the AC units, the Freon, we evacuated. So everything that Dale mentioned and a couple of other things have been incorporated in the final version.
Okay. There was a question before about, who pays for testing, whether it's asbestos or whatever else. I mean, it's the applicant, isn't it?
Yeah, the applicant pays for it. Before you can get a demolition permit, you have to submit the survey, which is paid. That's a paid tester. He does the test, and you have to give it to, the results go down to Durham. You cannot come out of Durham And if there is a positive asbestos test, you can't come out of there until you are on record of supplying a certified contractor to remove the asbestos. Durham comes to the site to do those inspections. They're actually logged online. Anybody can look up the site and look at them. Where the asbestos or the debris is bagged or moved or how it's done, that's followed to the site, and it's logged in at the county, and that's how it's done. So you cannot move anything when you have that test that there is a positive for asbestos. The only way you're going to do that is if you follow now the contractor, and that's all logged on at the county.
Oh, and also the provision of demolition on Saturdays is being included.
Right, no demo on Saturday.
Council discussion? Kelly?
Yeah, I'm concerned about enforcement and oversight. Well, these are all great things, it's a big improvement, but I had a discussion with the manager today, and like I was saying earlier, I'm currently enrolled in Neighbor to Demolition 101, so I'm watching things, and I identified maybe 3 things, just because, A, I have a good vantage point from being up a little higher. And I think, I don't know what the staff is doing. I know the police have been empowered, and I know they respond to calls. But I think we need to be extremely proactive and, visit these sites all day, every day. And I know that we're up to, almost 30 of them. So I think it's going to be daunting at some point.
There's only 6 active construction sites at the moment. The rest of them are demolition sites and some that are in between waiting.
Okay, well, both then.
And we do monitor them on a daily basis, not just code, but myself, Ron, JC, the police department. And this will give us the actual tool to be able to cite people. We did not have that before. We never had a demolition ordinance. There were some things that we instituted in the building department. We gave them a list of things that we wanted them to do, but there was no tool for us to enforce as far as penalties and things like that. This will give it to us. Thank you.
Anyone else from the council? Questions, comments? Okay, Paul Basil.
Hello, Paul Basil, 9240 West Bay Harbor Drive. Regarding demolition, is there an ordinance about how soon they have to put sod on the vacant lot?
Yes.
Yes.
30 days.
It's 30 days. From the
Once the
day
permit-
they finish demolition? Well, no, once the permit is closed.
If they don't pull a building permit.
No, once they close out the demo permit.
Right, and there's been at least 5 that have been notified, given a notice that they have to do the sod and remove the fences.
And how long do they have to put the sod down from the notice, time of notice?
30 days,
So it's 60 days total?
pretty much.
Well, to all the council that lives on the West Island, there's so much dust on the East Island now. I paid at my car wash Saturday at 4 in the afternoon. This morning I had dust and dirt all over it. It would be great if we could reduce, I don't know why they need 60 days to put sod down, but it would be great if we could make it 30. So I suggest that. We had our first rodent in 10 years. I know that's the next one, but I'll be efficient. I would advise the property owners around demolition to call critter control. We closed off all our openings on the roof because the rats actually come up through the pipes, then go on the roof. So, and then the last thing is, it would be great if they don't work on weekends. They would only add an extra 52 days to construction time. So there's 3 points right there. Thanks. Have a good night. Is there any chance they can reduce the time to get sod?
With the change ordinance.
So,
Can we add that? Can we just reduce it from 60 to 30, or?
We can't add it here. This is
do a
not the
poll vote
corporate
next
rate.
meeting, right?
We can put it on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss.
Yeah, I'll put it on.
All right.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, thank you. Victor Maya?
Victor Maya, 1155 103rd Street, and I do thank you for this. It's something that we very much needed. Just a couple of things. I believe there was some discussion about not beginning a demolition project on a Friday. because it was going to leave everything out there over the weekend. There's no water control, no nothing, so I think there was some discussion about not actually starting a demolition project on a Friday. I think that's something that we could look at. Secondly, with respect to the notice, I would like, to be clear that they put up a sign like the one required for P&Z notices, so that everybody is clear on the size of the sign, what it says, the content, and it be that big. Also, that notices go to all the residences within at least a 1-block radius as opposed to just the next door, because you're dealing with a lot of wind and issues with migrating dust and things of that sort. Finally, with respect to the plan, I think if we do have to include asbestos removal, I don't think it's asking a lot for somebody from our building department to confirm from Durham that the asbestos has actually been removed before they issue the permit. I don't think that we have anybody right now that does that. I don't think that's part of the process. With respect to a specific, check off, yes, okay, they've done that. The same thing goes with the removal of the trees with respect to the demolition. That there is, a permit from the county to remove the trees demolition. I think those are just some things to kind of tighten this up a little bit, but overall, thank you.
Thank you. Francis, I'm sorry, Josh.
Just to follow up on that, when I spoke to Durham and the man in charge of this, he said the owner of the property always gets the results or the final disposition report of this asbestos. We can require that the owner provide us a copy. They don't, because the owner is ultimately responsible for it, and to the end. But we can always request just that they provide us a copy to it, like we do everything else. But that information is still available online to anybody.
So,
you might as well request a copy of it then.
But not a horrible thing. My question was going to be on something else. I was going to ask Dale something, but he had to step out for a moment. When they do a demolition, now, I know they water it, obviously, right, at the time of demolition. They usually they're supposed to be watering at least a portion. My question then becomes, how many days are they supposed to usually water? Is it for 2 days straight after demolition?
As long as they're taking it down, it's supposed to be watered on Saturday.
Well, because my question becomes, we're going to be speaking very shortly about no construction on Saturday. And that brings back the fact if we're doing a demolition on Friday, if there's a need, in other words, it creates a potential problem. If they're demolishing on Friday and they really do need to water on Saturday, to continue after the demolition, then demolition on Friday is inappropriate. So
I'm not a demolition expert, but I wish we could wait for Dale to come back. But the watering is when you're disturbing and you're pulling things down. That's when they water. The Monday to Friday, whether you do constructions, any construction that starts on a Friday, if it can't happen on Saturday, it's not.
No, but that's a different thing. I'm saying, but if something requires, in other words, if
it doesn't require. Are you required to water constantly when you start a demolition to end? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. See, if it's going to take an extra, if it's going to need another day on top of it, then I don't want anybody demolishing on Friday if they have to do it on Saturday, but then we're saying to them, well, you can't work on Saturday, so we're just going to leave dust over there on the weekend. That's the problem, I see.
You're supposed to water as long as you're, like you said, disturbing it. As long as you're pulling things out, throwing it in the truck, you're supposed to water down so the dust doesn't fly everywhere. Obviously, if you're not disturbing the dirt.
They're not finished, but if they're not finished on the end of the Friday.
But if they start on Thursday, they're not going to be finished by Saturday or Sunday either. It takes a couple of weeks, so...
my observations are that with a 3-story building like the Edgewater, it took them close to a week. They take apart the apartments, they pull the windows out, they do a lot of interior work and a lot of these things, like, I guess, the Freon. And then once they start knocking down the concrete, that's when the dust happens. And there, what happened, the first day, they were using a leaky garden hose. And, it was ridiculous. And I went and I talked to the contractor. I said, don't you use kind of like a fire hose looking thing? He goes, oh, yeah, I can get one of those. So once they did that, it was a lot more effective. But maybe we should just say that whenever they start to knock down the concrete block, why don't we just require they start the demolition on a Monday? that gives them the whole week. But if they're ready to go on a Wednesday or Thursday and they start pulling apart the windows and the apartments, they even pull the wood out and they sort everything into piles for recycling.
Some of the demolition does take 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
We have seen it take 2 or 3, depends on the size of the building.
Every site, it's site different.
Yes. So just want to...
I guess we can come back over it when Dale goes back in.
Okay. Well, we have more public comments, so maybe Dale will come in by then. Susan Luck?
Susan Luck, 1018 West Bay Harbor Drive. Just an observation, there's a lot of buildings on the West Island that have been taken down that are those small cottages. There are up to 4 on a property. They do not require DERM to check for asbestos. Am I correct with that?
Yes.
Okay.
But just to give you an idea how...
Can you stop the clock, please?
Actually, how Durham looks at it,
Yeah, I think what we're going to do, Susan, you finish the comment.
Okay, then let me come.
Then Ron will let-
I spoke to the inspector at Durham for about an hour. I went through the whole process. We had a great conversation. He offered to take me out and go around because of my concerns. One of the things that he did say was that if it's small properties, they're not required, and he went through the whole process, that we don't really know. We have to trust at some point that the developer has done anyway in the bigger projects what they're supposed to do, because they could get a hefty fine, and that doesn't happen often. But my concern is, what is the responsibility of the town for the smaller properties? For example, on 100th Street, 4 properties were taken down. The mound exceeds the height of the fence. It has not been taken away yet, and as a result, the top part is blowing onto the street. What are the requirements in this demolition ordinance that you can't wait till they decide to do that little corner? Because they've gone on to another demolition project. It's the same one that was on 100th Street, that was on 102nd and 103rd. And it's kind of like a contractor. They take some of your money and they go on to the next site. They're not fully... And again, it's the town, I think, the responsibility to make sure that within a certain period of time, it is taken away. Look at the site on the north side of 100th Street, and you'll see what I'm referring to. It was there all weekend and the week before.
Thank you. Normally, the demolition people, they work pretty fast, and they try to finish a job. The one I think you're talking about, it's one owner of many properties.
I really don't know.
Because I wanted to come back to that, because you mentioned, when it's smaller units. Durham actually told me when you have one property owner who has one owner with multiple properties, and maybe they have less than the 4, they don't look at it as less than 4. They kind of combine them all up, and then they say, well, now you have to have the asbestos survey. So to answer, just so you know that, which is a good thing. And as far as the demo, usually they start and stop. Sometimes you see piles when they're taking the building apart. They do separate out metals, and they separate out certain things, which is going to be either, I don't know how they dispose of it, but the contractor does that, and they usually get it out of there fairly quickly.
Okay. So I guess for me, the question is, for the town, how long can a pile sit before the demolition company needs to follow through and complete the project and take it away? And the second part, if I may, there's no testing by Durham or anyone else for the debris that's in that dust, whether it be the lead from the old paint or anything else. So I would propose that, just as we said, it might be voluntary, but we ask the developers to really be mindful and to test for some of the other things. Asbestos is certainly not the only thing we're seeing in those older properties that are coming down.
Thank you. I know Dale is here now, and if you could come up, Dale. One of the question was, during demolition, when they're watering down the site, once they're finished for the day, or let's say they break on a Friday, and the debris sits there over the weekend, say it's not going to happen on Saturday, so it's going to be from Friday to Monday. Is there a need to continue watering the site?
Well, the reason for watering the site is while they're tearing down the building and the dust, and it becomes airborne, and that's why they water
the debris to keep the dust from flying around. Now, I guess there will be some debris after it dries out over the weekend and fly around a little bit, but I'm hearing some concerns that maybe there's some asbestos or lead-based or something in there. Well, all of this has been tested by Durham. They send it to their air section, and they've had it tested or removed by a licensed contractor, state-licensed abatement contractor to do that. So we really don't have the expertise to go in and test it ourselves. We just rely on Durham because that's what they do. And they get the report from the licensed abatement contractor that says it's free of certain...
Yeah, that maybe that's something I didn't make clear. And when, not only can you not get you cannot get the permit out of Durham until you have the contractor on site, you can't start demoing the building until the asbestos is out of the building. So when they actually start demoing it, it's been removed. They said you can track it, their reports, how many visits they made to the site, all that kind of stuff is there. And as they said, I don't know if you were in the room, the owner gets the report of the destination of the asbestos. Right. I think we can require or ask of the owner to supply us with a copy of that report.
I think they did say they would send us a copy. They send it to the owner. And all of this stuff is, if it has asbestos in it or lead-based or something, it is bagged and sent to a landfill that's approved to accept that kind of thing. It's not like they just put it out in some dump somewhere, but it all is bagged and sent to and tracked to a approved landfill. As far as the other stuff on site, I like, your explanation. They do separate the recyclable materials. They pull out the steel and the concrete and the lumber that's recyclable, and the rest of it they haul off to some dump site to be incinerated. But they do recycling on site, and that's why you see a lot of the piles around the site. And the reason that a lot of them seem to stay there a little longer is because of the travel time they need to go to take it to an approved dump. They just can't take it, to anywhere. It has to go to an approved dump to be processed.
If a site was abandoned, say there's no activity, I mean, it's like, and we know that pretty fast, if the site's not being active, then we would have to, take action. If they just walked off the site and, nobody's coming around, and we haven't really encountered that, so.
I have a question for the building official. Sure. And pardon me for being blunt, but I'm going to be blunt. When you're outside from the room, there were a couple of people that pretty much in a nutshell what they said is they're implying that the town's not doing what they should be doing to protect the residents. And specifically, they're saying this, even though they're inferring it on the council, really, it's on you, because it's your responsibility, you're the building official. Yes, he's the manager, but you are, a lot of people don't know how important the building official is. And in the state of Florida, there's only 3 people you have to have that work for a municipality. You have to have a manager, you have to have a clerk, and you have to have a building official. You don't even have to have a chief of police. The building official you have to have 24/7. So when people are coming up to council, but we like them. The reality is that, when people are coming up to this, this meeting, and this isn't the first time, and they're inferring that the town is not doing their due diligence, they're not doing what they need to do to protect the life, health, safety of the residents, it's very disconcerting. And, the majority of the people that sit on the stairs are not, no one here is a contractor. I used to sit on Bora, but, I don't pretend to be a professional. I'm certainly not a licensed contractor or PE. What I would ask is for you, as our building official, to come up with any recommendations, if any, in order to protect the life, health, and safety of our residents. It's nice to have residents come up and have concerns, but there's a difference between what a concern is and what is a legitimate threat. And, it's my impression that maybe other municipalities don't do this, but I would like to know from the building official if there's something that we need to do to legislate that doesn't exist. But I don't want to hear any more people talking about issues without hearing from the building official as far as, that's a great idea, we should be doing that. Or, no, that's really not concerned because this is covered by the state of Florida, this is covered by the county. I want to know the truth of what should we be doing, because that's why we have you and that's why you work for us. So, all those years of experience should be used right now to determine what do we need to do.
Well, I think the procedures we put in place tonight by passing this ordinance, we've added, we're far and above any other city in this county on what they require of demolition contractors. Most of the time, the department will issue a permit, and the guy will come in there and demolish the building and be gone. And that's it. Nobody tracks him and follows up, excuse me, except for maybe the work at Durham is doing. They have to send the reports down, the asbestos abatement things at Durham. But with the things we put in here tonight, with the rodent traps, with the screening of the site, with all of even the Jiffy John, we've heard some complaints about the senior workmen not being, relieving themselves on the site. So that's why we put in the Jiffy John. We put in gravel at the entrance to keep the mud and stuff from tracking out into the streets. And I think we've done above and beyond. We're doing everything we can to help allay some of the concerns of the citizens.
Jordan, before you ask, Gail, how much experience do you have around? I know you're a very young guy, but you've had some experience that...
Well, I've been a contractor since the 1970s, and I've been a building official for 35 years, so...
No, the reason I ask is, like, for example, while you're out, you don't have the advantage of hearing what people said, but Ms. Luck came in and said that there was a property that she witnessed where the height of the dust exceeded the fence.
The debris.
Of the debris, I'm sorry, the debris exceeded the height of the fence, and her concern was, that the debris and dust would move onto the public, right away and, to other properties. Again, I understand that it's tested, but her recommendation was, can we test that? These are all, again, separate what someone wants from what, your professional experience. What do we need to do? And if it's nothing, it's nothing. If you say, that might be an extra thing, but it's not a big deal, I'm open to hearing what you think we should be doing, and like I said, while you were out, Councilmember Fuller mentioned another item where, he didn't feel comfortable that they do, demolition on Thursdays because, perhaps it might transcend into the possible weekends,
Friday.
I'm sorry, Friday. Right, and then they said, well, depending on the building, it could last a week or a couple weeks. So, again, these are like, we're having this conversation, but we don't have the intelligence as far as your professional experience, so I'd like to defer to you to find out what do you think we should be doing, if anything.
Well, like I said, I think this ordinance we've done tonight addresses 99 9/10% of our problems, and if anyone has a concern, they can certainly call me, Ron, or Marlene, and we'll go out and we'll take a look at it, and we'll try to get it resolved. As a matter of fact, we just spoke to an owner today. He's had trash laying on his lot for about a week now. He's in an argument with his demolition contractor, and we told him, that's not our concern. Get it removed, and so it becomes a legal issue. He doesn't want to breach his contract by paying somebody else to do the work, but he's got to get the work done. So if anybody has a concern, just notify us, and we'll go out and we'll address that concern.
Joe gave him a week, and if he doesn't get it done in a week, code will go out and sign him.
And how do we judge those delays, or should we build in a certain delay if there's no activity for a week? That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And some of them I've seen where they've done a partial demolition, and part of that is because they're having to haul off the thing. The sites are so small that they don't have room to stockpile the debris, so they have to load it on a truck and take it out immediately. So it just depends on the cycle of the truck, how far it has to go for a dump, to come back and get another load. So a lot of that is delay and
Do we need to build anything into this from a legal standpoint, maybe that just says if there's something that you deem to be unsafe that's not specifically written into here, that, you have the ability to make a recommendation, or kind of like the subjective part of our building code? If you deem something to be generally unsafe, but you can't...
Well, that's why we have the fence, and the screening around the site is to keep the general public out and away from that site, because something may be dropped, or maybe a part of the building may fall. But,
What about the case where the pile is higher than this fence and is there for a while?
well, let me, report, give me where it is, and we'll go take a look at it. Yeah, well,
Just, I think it's important that anything that Dale sees that's unsafe, he's allowed, or he can stop the site, slap a stop work permit. I mean, that goes without saying. He has that authority already.
Yeah, he has
Legal.
special powers as the building official and wide leeway in regards to that. And that's something I don't think was mentioned, that unlike some other departments, the building official does have a significantly more leeway when it comes to his professional expertise.
And there is a catch-all provision in here about the town manager requiring any documentation or additional requirements in any particular site. That's the last one.
yeah. And there again, anything that's not in this ordinance, if a citizen has a concern, let us know. We'll go out and we'll take a look at it, and we'll address it at that time.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention that when we started looking at this, they'll help me with the Florida Building Code. I did a survey, and there is one city that has a demolition ordinance in this county. One. And it's a very short little paragraph. So this is probably the first one that is so comprehensive. And I'm sure we'll find something someday to amend it. But, and as far as you say, noticing no activity, we keep a close eye on them. And Evelyn keeps a list. We check with the building department whether they final the demolition. I requested a final inspection the other day because the people hadn't requested it. They went out, did the inspection. So we're keeping an eye on it, and we're trying to move them, because once they close the permit, then they have the 30 days to start it. So we're keeping an eye on all these things. It's just, sometimes we don't see something, you feel free to bring it to us.
Susan, you had one question.
And I want to thank all of you for listening to the concerns and addressing them. So my question is just, so what is the protocol for a citizen? I usually send my emails to Marlene and Ron. I don't if they send it on to all of you. I really didn't know about approaching Dale. What is the protocol for, what's the best way to get that information out as quickly as possible when we see something?
Just the way you're doing it, because it's good that Marlene and I know, and, we ultimately, within a few minutes of getting it, we talk to Dale.
Yeah.
But sometimes that doesn't go to Dale, sometimes it's another thing.
Right.
That goes somewhere else.
If you go on the town's website, there's contact information for most of the town employees who are, department heads and so forth, so you can find their email addresses and so forth. So you could always copy, the building official on, if you're emailing Ron or Marlene about, an issue with a construction site or demolition site, so that, the more people who know about it, the better.
I'd just like to thank all the citizens for coming here, and really speaking up and sending the emails and participating in the committees, Environmental Impact Committee, present and past. Thank you very much for sticking it out and letting us know and continuing to do that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I gave Miss Luck one question, Ms. Newhart, you get one question. And then and Ken, you didn't write down the number, so, of the item you wanted to... Okay.
It's not on there?
I didn't see yours.
You've handed in?
All right, go ahead, Mrs. Newhart.
Did you hand them in?
Mrs. Newhart, go ahead. I may have them out of order. Go ahead.
Francis Newhart, 1060 King Concourse. Basically, this is talking about an ordinance and adding it to the town 5.5.1. I hope this isn't interfering with the fact that we have an ordinance section 5.5 originally, and I sat in for over 5 years with this EIC committee, and they did draw up a demolition permit of sorts. It might not be as good as the one Mr. Miller has modified, and it's better, but we did have an ordinance. So if someone should go with a class action suit against this town, they shouldn't be told that they didn't have a demolition permit, or I should say demolition ordinance. They do. And as a matter of fact, in that demolition permit of 5.5, you have watering of exposed loose earth. This was supposed to be done. Also, I had a building permit pulled back in 2007 approved. I had to go through a lot of expenses, including soil and all this other stuff that was negligent on the building department for not asking them for these things before even allowing a building permit. Like I said, if a class action suit comes through the town for the town's negligence, it goes from the building department to code compliance, because I have been getting emails of things that were sent that these people did not even have demolition permits to even remove the soil or to do any work. And I think even the night that some council members approved for soil in the middle of the night, like 6 or 8 o'clock, by the school, to have the properties remove soil. I mean, people were taking pictures. They couldn't believe how disrespectful on a Friday night that you were doing that.
Thank you.
Again, he is not following our... I just want to say that this is very confusing. You're supposed to cross out or add on to an ordinance. He's making a brand-new ordinance.
First of all, don't assume that Michael Miller draws all of our
He had
ordinances,
nothing to
because
do
he
with it. That's what he told me.
And
He told me the last time.
Marlene explained this before. This is a new
Okay.
section of an ordinance. But
A new section or a new ordinance?
New section.
New section to section
There's no- not going to debate
5.5?
that. Marlene explained it. If you have other questions of Marlene,
Well, I
please
heard
feel
what she
free.
said to Vincent, and I think it's incorrect what she said to him. That's why.
I disagree with you.
Can she please repeat it?
5.5 is construction site operations. 5.51 is demolition sites. Two totally different things, Mrs.
So it's two separate ordinances?
Yes. One is already existing, this is new.
Right,
Okay, so the part where it says the watering down, which is in 5.5...
That's also
So
included.
in 5.51. Okay,
Right.
thank
Nothing's
you.
happening to 5.5. It's still staying there. Ken Eskin. Sorry, you don't write the number.
Ken Eskin, 1310 99th Street. I'm surprised with all the conversation, and we were talking about with the debris fields, when the tractor trailers have to go on the highway to drive, they all have to be covered. I don't know if it's Durham or DOT, they're forced to cover the trucks. Why don't we have, at the end of the day, at the end of Friday, if they can't get rid of the debris field, why don't we simply have them cover all of those debris fields? They make very large tarps. The tarp can be watered down. And by Susan's comments as far as the arsenic and the lead, that stuff won't fly. All we have to do is put in the code that it has to be covered. That might also give them a little incentive to make sure they get done by the end of time on Friday. If not, simply cover it for the weekend, if it's above where it's supposed to be, even if it's not, because stuff flies in the wind. You have a very heavy wind over the weekend, you always have debris in the air. This way, by covering it, I don't think they'd have that problem.
Thank you. Okay. Call the question. I think we've got public comment finished. Any more comments?
What about all of these great suggestions? Should we lump them into one item with the sod and revisit them as well? Because we can't add them in to the second reading.
If there's anything you want to add or discuss further, just, we'll add it to the agenda for next.
I have a list, and I'll let you know, Marlene, just mostly these good suggestions, and we'll look at it as a whole.
Okay.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
Great.
Poll vote.
Councilmember Sarver.
4.
Councilmember Reed.
4.
Councilmember Fuller.
4.
Councilmember Bruder, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Leonard.
4.
Mayor Yaffe.
4.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 11, consideration and approval of an ordinance on first reading to amend the Town Code, Section 5-5 of the Town Code to require the active construction sites maintain rodent control until they receive a certificate of occupancy from the town.
Notice of the Town of Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, amending Section 5.5 of the Bay Harbor Islands Town Code with regard to the regulation of construction site operations to include a requirement for rodent control, providing for penalties, providing for severability, providing for certification, providing for an effective date.
I'll move it.
Second. I note that the language also, it's not just a direction, but the property owners to provide photographs of traps and documentation of treatment by a certified company.
Right.
So for the standards, like the distance between them, we're going to leave that up to industry standard by the company?
I would assume so. I mean, we're not professionals
Right.
in rodent control.
How did Paul Basil get a rodent?
He was, well, just to know, the town, we put out traps also on King Concourse and several other areas, and we don't tell the company how many we want. We tell them we want rodent control, and they say, okay, we recommend this many, and that's what they do, just as an informational.
Right. Anybody else on the council? Questions? Victor Maya?
Victor Maya, 1155 103rd Street. I think this is a great amendment to this ordinance. I do have a couple of issues, in looking at the overall ordinance that I thought perhaps, while we're dealing with these issues, could be looked at. One is there's a provision here on erosion and runoff control, which I think would probably work just as easily in addition on the demolition part, and I think you should consider looking at that. Secondly, there is a huge loophole that we have with respect to the sodding on these demolition sites, and that is when our town manager decides to deem one of these lots a staging area for other construction projects. Case in point, 99th Street across from the current building, being used as a staging area, and has been used as a staging area for months now. Months of all that gravel, all that dust, workers coming in and out and parking and so on and so forth, using this private land in the middle of a residential area as staging. And I think this is something that you all need to look at. You can close that loophole right here and now. The ordinance specifically talks about parking plans in writing. I don't know that I've requested them. I haven't seen them. I don't know if that's even being followed. I think this is something that you can consider. Finally, there's some confusion that I see as far as enforcement is concerned. On the previous one, it talked about incorporating Dade County penalties and things of that sort. This one specifically talks about $250 fines, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want us to be interpreting Dade County law again to decide what we can and can't do as far as enforcement. And I think that's something that we need to look at and consider and make consistent throughout. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for public comment.
Yeah.
Anybody else think, Jordan?
Yeah, I want to ask if on page 1 on 5-5A 1 and 2, if that was a Scribner's error of all the and signs.
That's just the translation. It's
Okay,
not
that's
on
good.
on the ordinance.
I was just,
Not
okay.
picking up the,
Yeah, I figured that would get taken care of, so.
yeah.
Yeah, they are, actually.
Poll the council, Marlene?
Councilmember Ford,
4.
Councilmember Reed, 4. Sauer stepped out. Vice Mayor Leonard,
4.
Mayor Yaffe,
4.
passes.
Item 12, consideration and approval of an ordinance on first reading amending the Town Code Section 12-26 of the Town Code to change the allotted hours of construction and to prohibit the operation of construction sites on Saturday.
An ordinance of the Town of Bay Harbor, Islands, Florida, amending Section 1226, permissible hours for construction activity and landscaping, providing for penalties, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Again, I would just like to thank all of the residents who came out last month to talk about this issue and who spoke to many of us yesterday at the annual picnic and expressed their concerns. Council?
And also that we received numerous emails for people who couldn't be here, all supporting it.
I'll start with a few things. One, I definitely support, the fact that we're going to restrict Saturdays. There's no question there, but there are a few things I want to address. One goes back to something we spoke about a few moments ago. I get a little worried when we talk about the demolition on Friday. If there was a belief that there was a need for watering, no construction, but if there's watering to keep dust down on Saturday, I would not be against putting an amendment in here to allow just for the watering, because I think that's for the betterment of the citizens rather than having dust spraying around on a weekend. I would hope that demolition is not getting so bad on a Friday that there is going to be a lot of dust still on Saturday, but if it gets to a point where 2 days of no watering is going to create a dust cloud, I'd rather have somebody out there with a hose on the Saturday just to make sure that there's not a problem. So I'm going to offer that as an amendment in a moment. But beforehand, the other two things I wanted to address is, when we do this, we have one potential problem that I can see, and actually, Frank, I'd want to ask you on this and your thoughts. One of the things is we sold, for example, the town sells a lot of the TDRs. And when the town sells a TDR, we do it under our standard contract, which allows and requires that the construction be done within a year, and they close on the TDRs within the year. If we're limiting the number of hours here, which is what I think what all of us intend to do, my issue then becomes now, are we going to start creating an interference with the contract because we are changing the rules by which they negotiated the contract as far as finishing within the year, because we're also going to later on talk about increasing the cost of those TDRs. So I just want to make sure we're not walking into a minefield.
I don't believe we're walking into a minefield. You're not, you have the ability to determine the permissible hours. Everyone takes knowing that, just like everyone takes knowing what the price of the TDRs are, or that the TDRs can go up as well if they want an extension or the like. So a lot of things change. And this certainly would be one of them, which would be a reasonable change.
So my worry though is I don't love the fact that we could be creating a problem where it takes these things longer to get constructed. I want the buildings built quick. I want them with the least amount of problems for the residents. And I think a lot of these things have been scheduled for certain time periods. To that end, I would want to potentially address changing the hours for how late. I don't want to go any earlier in the morning. But if we're going to take away Saturday, I would offer an amendment that we're going to add 1 hour in the afternoon on the Monday through Fridays, just so that we can try and get these things done on time. But
I don't know if the audience is aware about the 8 o'clock change.
Well,
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, were saying, but I just wanted to point out as you were discussing this, that we have a staff memo with recommendations about hours of construction. It's some of the things that you're talking about.
Right, but I would just want to do something there in order to make sure we don't have these things drag on. I want the projects done faster, not new projects coming in, but projects that are already in effect so that they are planned, because the last thing we want is dust going on for a longer period of days. That would be my main concern. But to that end, I'm going to start with the first part on here, but I would want to make sure that we do have, and I'll offer an amendment that I would like to have on here, is that we do have, for the exception for watering, if there is a requirement, or we believe, especially the building department believes that there should be watering on Saturday, no construction.
Make it for Saturday and Sunday, because, I would recommend to make it for both Saturday and Sunday, just for watering, because, if that's a legitimate concern, then, why in the world would you restrict someone from doing something that you would want them to do? But I'm saying that what's the difference if they need to come on a Saturday? What if they only need to come on a Saturday, but it gets out of control on Sunday? I think they need to be responsible for their property. And if that means they have to do something, watering down the site is not, in my opinion, construction.
It's not construction. I don't want the construction on the weekends, but again, like I said, I don't want a dust cloud if it starts. It tends to be my belief, and I would ask Dale as well, but the fact of the matter is, if you find that near the end of Friday, that if it's not going to get watered over a Saturday or a Sunday, and you've got a windy Saturday or Sunday coming up, wouldn't it be beneficial for the residents to have it just watered down? No construction, just watered down only.
I'd like to make a comment.
Hurricanes are exceptions. They're changes. The town manager can control things during national disasters.
Definitely help keep down the dust and debris on site.
Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, so I move that we amend to add, so Saturday and Sunday is allowed for watering only, no construction.
I'll second that.
Demolition sites.
On demolition sites,
Yeah,
sorry.
of course, I'll second that.
Kelly?
I'm not sure if everyone is aware that there's been a trade-off proposed, that in exchange for no demolition on Saturdays, the 9 a.m. start time on weekdays is being proposed to move to 8 a.m. I do not support that in any way.
No. That's why I said before, I don't agree with moving earlier at all.
Okay.
Especially not when you're going to have construction starting at the same time as school starting. I don't agree with going earlier anyway.
But can I ask you all, I mean, I know that, there's information that you're receiving that you were not aware of, but let's try to keep the, anybody who wants to speak can speak, of course.
Mayor, from me, I know one of the items here is, working the right-of-way and some of the town projects that, we get involved with. Currently, the bridge is one of them where the work is being done outside of, where...
It's outside of residential area.
Outside the residential area. There is a time component in that contract, and believe it or not, I mean, just so you know that if we take out that Saturday, because they do work additional hours, I let them start earlier to get more done faster, because it's beneficial to us to get the work completed as fast as possible, because we'll talk about it later, some of the things we're finding out there, so.
Well, I think this should exempt construction on
Okay,
the
I'm
bridge.
just making...
Maybe we should put,
Bridge, the causeway sometimes out in the...
That's rush hour, too. That's when people need to get off the island and get to work.
Right, but we're doing that underneath the bridge. A lot of the work that we're doing is underneath. It's, pilings and things of that nature. So it's not there, so.
I'm going to do what I normally don't do, but I'm going to read this, because I think that, so that you all know what is in front of us. I'll try to do this slowly. This is the recommendation. Staff recommends that the town council differentiates between an active construction site for new structures and current homeowner resident doing work on existing structures that might need to have some work done on Saturdays, either by the homeowner himself, herself, or by a plumbing company, electric, roof, windows, or some limited construction activity. We believe that this limited construction activity does not have the same impact as an active construction site and should be permitted to work on Saturdays within the limited hours. There's also a section in the proposed ordinance included for town projects, since most of these occur on town right-of-way and away from residential areas, with some exceptions, and have an impact on the residents and the public at large. It is in the best interest of the town to have some flexibility on the hours allowed in these cases. For example, some bridge work needs to be done at night because of bridge closures. Some public works projects that require lane closures can be scheduled for later hours or weekends to minimize traffic impact. If construction is prohibited on Saturdays, staff recommends that the council consider going back to the 8 a.m. starting time on weekdays, that didn't say that here, but on weekdays, and allow for an extra hour in the evenings during daylight savings time. This would give the sites the hours that they would be losing from not operating on Saturdays. This suggestion is made with the thought in mind that reducing construction hours will lengthen the duration of the project and the impact and discomfort to residents. Giving some hours back during weekdays might minimize the duration of the project. The change during daylight savings time has not been included in the ordinance for first reading. If the council wishes to do so, it can be added for second reading. So I just want you all to see what was in front of us. And the hours, I think you're asking, Ms. Morano, are, I don't really remember how many years ago it was that we went from the 8 a.m. start time to the 9 a.m. start time, and why we really did that, because in my view, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because on weekdays, most of us are up, we're getting out, we're going to work and so forth, and it doesn't really disturb most of us on weekdays. I understand the issue about the school, and we've made certain restrictions by the school as to hours and types of construction, because we don't want the construction interfering with parents getting their kids to school, or kids who walk to school, or ride their bikes to school and so forth, and that's really important. Part of the problem, I think, in the past was enforcement, the lack of enforcement, where, when there was an 8 a.m. start time, people were out there before 8 a.m. Doing work, and that's a problem. But I think that we see now, with the 9 a.m. start time, that there's really no mercy, so to speak, that when the police or code enforcement sees, I think as the chief has said before, they're starting even 2 minutes before Marlena said, this 2 minutes before the start time, they're going to get a $250 violation, I think is what it is. So enforcement is really important. And I think if we go back to 8 a.m., and we have the appropriate enforcement, I think that's a good, I would say, compromise. I mean, one of the things I'm interested in also, and particularly people living it doesn't matter whether you're on the East Island or the West Island, if you're living next to a construction site, behind a construction site, across the street from a construction site, it's going to be annoying. I mean, there's no doubt about that, because, you're going to be, whether it's the dust or the noise or people coming and going, you wanted to get it over with as quickly as possible. So if you're losing 7 hours a week on Saturdays, which would be the 10 to 5 that you'll lose if construction is prohibited on Saturdays, which I am in favor of, I think it helps to make it up during the week when we're not home, simply because we'll get the project done faster. I mean, you're going to have months longer on projects if you're taking away 28 hours a month of construction time. So that's a thought that the staff has recommended to the council, that, quality of life is, we don't want the noise on weekends. Some of us don't even want, frankly, commercial landscapers working on weekends because it's annoying. I tried to restrict that a couple of years ago, and the council wasn't in favor of that at the time. The hours, Ms. Morano, that are proposed in the ordinance are no construction activity at all on Saturdays, with those limited exceptions, and on weekdays from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., rather than 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it would cut it out on Saturday altogether, although the ordinance that's in front of us provides that landscaping activity could occur on Saturday. I'm not really in favor of that. And frankly, most of the commercial landscaping companies know when to come to, on where I live, they come on Wednesday, so that they know that the bulk pickup is on Thursdays. So most of them aren't here on weekends, and I think we can do without that.
Mayor? Just on the landscaping, sometimes we catch up every once in a while if we get bad weather or something, or projects impact Brickman. We do let them come in on a Saturday.
So on the causeway, maybe, and as long as they're not using the blowers, which are really pretty annoying.
Most of it's handwork.
No, I understand. Well, if it's handwork on Saturdays, and that's probably okay, particularly since they're, out there on the causeway or on King Concourse. I think the other thing that I wanted to mention, I was just losing my train of thought, is that, I would carve out an exception, I think. There are a couple of people, homeowners, East and West Island, who said, we like to do it ourselves, we like to mow our lawn, and I grew up north in New Jersey. I used to cut the grass myself. So, I mean, if it's a homeowner, cutting the grass, then I would say that should be okay. They work during the week, they're not going to take off a morning or something to cut the grass. So I think we can carve out exceptions. I talked to Frank Simone, our assistant town attorney, briefly before the meeting started. I'm confident, and he's confident, that he can carve out all sorts of exceptions to make this work. And I say that because during some of the conversations we've had in the past about limiting construction hours, or the types of construction hours that maybe could be done on a Saturday, for example, or earlier or later, are, noise levels. And they're coming out with a decibel meter and saying, well, if it's not above a certain decibel level, then it should be permitted. But I think we can be very specific about what might be permitted. And understand that, under the current ordinance, where you can't start until 9 o'clock, if your electrician shows up or your plumber shows up at 8 o'clock, or you've got an air conditioning problem, they're out of there. I mean, they're going to be shut down and not be permitted to work before 9 o'clock, even though it's work that's going on inside the property and it's not making any noise at all. So I think we need to take that into consideration. Okay? I mean, quality of life is nothing goes on Saturday that's going to make any noise, but we want these projects done as quickly as possible, because we just want them done. Because the longer they go on, the more they annoy us. Isaac?
Right. My personal view, I concur with Bob in reference to the commercial landscaping activity, and I oppose, this provision that says other construction activity. I think it's way too general. I think the
What paragraph are you looking at? Just
well, B. I guess it's B. I guess it would fall under B, because in the explanation portion, it says that if people are working, it appears to me that, like on the West Island, if there are if there's construction on the West Island, that it's actually permitted on Saturday, still?
No. Work inside their dwelling unit or existing structure.
I guess what people have raised, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but somebody has said, like, if you're painting the inside of your house on a Saturday, I mean, it really doesn't, I would presume it doesn't bother anybody unless the workers are congregating outside, and then as a property owner, you got to make them come inside. If you were, one of my neighbors, there's a house under construction, they were laying tile. They weren't cutting the tile. They were just inside grouting and so forth. Does that bother people? So I think we need to identify types of activities that might be able to occur on the interior of a property, whether it's on the East Island or the West Island, that isn't going to make noise and disturb people. The real issue that people have told us about when they've come to the meetings is that, they want to enjoy themselves, whether it's sitting out in the balcony, sitting in the backyard, sitting out by the pool, whatever it is. On a Saturday, you work all week, a lot of us, and if we do have the opportunity to be at home on most of us on weekends sometimes, and you want to just enjoy that quiet time and not hear all of this noise. And it's, my wife, she called me one day, I wasn't in Miami, but I was out of town, and, one of my neighbors was pressure cleaning. It went on for 8 hours, on a Saturday. It's really annoying. And I think we've all had those experiences, so that's what we want to try to limit.
Well, then, here, under the exception for homeowners, it says that roof work could be incredibly noisy and disruptive.
I think the
smell of tar, right. I don't think
that's emergency roof repair is, I don't know if that's what you were thinking of.
It doesn't really say that.
No, I understand. That's why we should discuss all of this, which we're doing. On how it should be limited.
Well,
Jordan?
Yeah, I have a few things to say. This is, it's a good beginning. Originally, if you remember, I would say co-authored the noise ordinance actually before I was even on the council, and then, the infamous 3-year, most people don't realize this, but, that ordinance was the culmination of what almost... It literally took almost 3 years to get that ordinance passed. It's probably one of the hardest things ever to get through this council was to get these restrictions. I was the one that made some of these proposals that, now that we're talking about how we love them so much, where was everybody a couple years ago when how many people came to the council meeting and complained about how this is going to destroy their business and destroy all this, and, and originally we tried to get, no work on weekends, and we got, the few of us that supported it got killed, and the best we could do is, okay, we'll get, one day, but, it's a great beginning, but when we were discussing the noise ordinance, there was a lot of consideration as to what other municipalities were doing and what are we doing to make sure that everything is covered. A lot of things that the mayor's mentioned are the first time that we've mentioned this in a long time, and Councilman Salvers mentioned, what's going to be included, what's not going to be included. I think we have a general idea of what we want to do, but I think that there's a lot of things that probably are, this is a very generic and very small worded ordinance and really not where it probably should be. For example, you mentioned painting on the inside of the house. What about painting on the outside of the house? What if somebody wants to paint on the outside of their house and they want to do it as an owner project? Is that allowed? I think we need to be a little bit more specific, because when, this eventually becomes, law, people are going to have a lot of questions. I think we clearly understand about the construction projects, but 99% of the stuff we're talking about is not construction. We're talking about, individual homeowners and property owners, what can they do and what they can't do.
Well, I think, I think collectively we can, not just us here, but you there, can, come up with a very specific list of things that can be done, and it can be amended from time to time, and, you're right, it's very generic and broad, but, I think that it needs to be tweaked, and we need to, add items that we think are acceptable, types of work that can be done by, property owners on a weekend without disturbing neighbors and without causing noise.
But, and one of the other things I have a concern is with the current projects, because, someone comes, what Councilman Fuller mentioned, I think has some significant merit, not just to the properties that we sold TDRs, and so we have a actual contract and a deal with, but, other people that have invested millions of dollars and they've actually, went and got permits. Now, if we're going to they're going to be not grandfathered in, what's going to happen with those projects as far as delaying those projects, and increasing the cost of those projects. If somebody comes to this town, and I've said this many, many times, I don't mind putting a restriction on something where someone knows where they stand when they begin the project. So you come with both eyes open, you knowing that if you're going to come to Bay Harbor Islands, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do all these things. Sorry, so that you know in regards to what you need to do. I don't think it's fair for anyone, forget if it's a developer, but even a property owner or any type of person that comes to the town and they're going to invest their own money on their property, and then in the middle of the project, we're going to change the rules. And it's going to have a negative impact where they may actually not be able to finish the project. If one person mentioned to me that there's a possibility they may not be able to finish their project. Now, that may seem like a great idea, but I can't think of a worse thing happening, because of what's going to happen, and you've seen it in other cities that don't have the same socioeconomic condition. But what happens is, if you have a project that's half built, talk about you forget rodent problems, it's going to be an eyesore. You want exactly what he said. You want these projects to get done as fast as possible. And I don't mind restricting, future projects. Yeah, I don't mind restricting future projects, but the thought of having possible eyesores because people can't, decide to say, hey, I'm going to cut my loss, that puts us in a very, very bad position as far as how are we going to be able to police a project where someone abandons it or goes out of business or doesn't want to do it. What are you suggesting? Well, I think I'm suggesting that we need to have some concept as far as grandfathering current projects, particularly the ones that we have contracts with, because I see the legal implications that if we restrict or potentially charge them more money to continue to do their projects because they don't comply within the timeline, but at the same point, we had a deal, we could potentially be sued.
That's what I was saying before.
You could very easily deal with that by the following.
Right.
You could take the 2 hours or the 3 hours or whatever amount of hours and extrapolate that during the time in which they were in construction, and you took that away, allegedly, and then add that extra time. And that's one very easy way of doing it, and which would definitely satisfy everyone.
Right, and then you amend, you can take that into consideration, the TDR contracts, number one. And number two, I think that's why staff recommended this trade-off of going back to the 8 a.m. start time on weekdays, and perhaps even, as Ron, or as this memo says, during daylight savings time, portions of the year, give an extra half an hour in the evening until 6:30. You're going to make up most of the 7 hours that are lost from the Saturday. And then you have to balance quality of life with the responsibilities of the developers and the financial commitments that the developers and property owners, have made in our town. We value that, and that's very important. But, there's a way to balance things. And all of these issues can be resolved, I think, favorably to the residents and favorably to the builders who have projects underway.
Easily.
There are a lot of projects underway which may go on for, may have just started construction. So I think that if you say that those projects can build on Saturdays but the other projects can't, it's not really a feasible, workable solution. I think the solution is what has been recommended, is that we extend working hours during weekdays.
Also, if I may, sometimes some of the ordinances that Marlene and I do are deceptively simple. And the reason for it is, with regard to other construction activity, while at first blush it seems very simple and overly simple, it's designed for a very specific purpose. For example, someone sees someone painting their house. Well, obviously that doesn't disrupt anyone's quality of life. And the reason we kept it interior is because you don't see that. So day one, someone sees someone painting. Day two, someone thinks, oh, wow, I can do work now on Saturdays on my house. So now I'm going to tar my roof and have someone do that. And then the next person says, oh, well, then I can rip up my roof. And then suddenly you have a lot of activity, and there's a lot of issues with regard to, well, he's doing this, she's doing that. It's deceptively simple in that you don't want to see construction. in any way, shape, or form. That was the design, and perhaps it's very deceptively simple. However, we're willing to do whatever you want. If you want to have people painting on the exterior, doing anything that doesn't make noise, happy to do that. It's very hard to articulate a long list of things that people can do on the exterior of their home that don't make noise. Is replacing a window something that doesn't make noise? Is painting with a crew of 18 people so you can do it in a few days? Is that disruptive? There are a lot of different variables, and although it seems very simplistic, it was for a design purpose.
Right. I think one of the, maybe in my mind, one of the distinctions is, using power tools, for example. Something that's really going to make noise. So maybe if you're doing windows, you're using power tools. I don't know. I think that this is something that's an ordinance that's going to evolve over time and may be amended frequently, as need arises and as we experience, different types of work being done in the future. Marlene,
May I say something?
Yes.
This became an issue when we tried to enumerate everything, and we can't, obviously. The concern is noise. So, and we have said inside the dwelling unit or existing structure, renovation and maintenance. We can add to that as long as it doesn't exceed the noise decibel during the daytime. And refer to section 1221, which is 65 decibels.
My intent was not limited to noise. One of the things that I had in mind, in support of eliminating either construction and landscaping on Saturdays was the fact that kids are out of school on Saturday and Sunday. Kids play in our streets all the time. They play football, they ride their bikes, they ride their rollerboards and everything like that. And, just eliminating all types of construction would ease the roads of trucks and, other vehicles and, having guys, construction workers going back and forth and lunch trucks and all that kind of stuff, just getting them off the streets, completely and keeping the kids a little bit safe.
Right, but this is not for a construction site. We were trying to be sensitive to the homeowner who has to, works Monday through Friday, and the only time they can have the electrician come, or the AC guy come, or a window replaced, or the shutters put in, or something, painting, some landscape work around their house that doesn't create noise.
Then there should be, in my opinion, there should be a provision in here where they get a special permit for that type of quiet interior work on Saturdays.
You can't, the problem with that is that first of all, sometimes some of the stuff is so minor. If you need let's say you have suddenly you have a little bit of a plumbing leak, you need to call the plumber Friday says it's...
Well, that, repair the plumbing work, you don't even need a permit.
I understand, but you're claiming... No, but, if someone...
If you have a plumber come and unstuff the toilet, you need a permit?
You need a permit for certain plumbing things. Like if your hot water heater goes out, if you need to replace your toilet, you need a permit.
Right, but I'm not saying if you've got one pipe that's leaking and it's just fixing one thing for a second...
Never an emergency issue.
Right, you don't need to... What you just said a moment ago is that you're saying, well, if they need them on a Saturday, that you got to go ahead and file a special Saturday permit. That doesn't make sense. First of all, some of these things are last minute. I don't want somebody sitting there with a water leak over a weekend because they couldn't come in and get a permit.
Well, no, you get it after the fact.
But it becomes more difficult for them. We don't want to make it difficult for the residents. We want to just make it so it's convenient, but at the same time, it's courteous to their neighbors so that we're not creating, a mass amount of noise and just disruption over the weekend. Going back to one thing earlier, the mayor was saying, I will disagree as far as moving the hour earlier, and I understand you're saying most people are up.
Speaking to the mic.
Sorry. I do understand that most people are up, but the fact remains that construction begins even before it begins, and what I mean by that is that the workers are there beforehand in the morning. So if you've got a 9 a.m. start time, they're not getting there at 8:59. No matter how much we enforce it, there's nothing we can do if they want to start showing up a few minutes beforehand. So
I'm going to interrupt you because I think these days the contractors will tell you that is not in fact true. That on my street there's been a house under construction for a long time, and that gate has got to be closed until 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm. So they don't go away. Well, that house on your street's been...
No, but I'm just saying. But what I'm saying is that the construction workers know to stay away. I'm not saying it's perfect.
Right, but my point is, it's, we always look at it, it's always going to be there earlier. Now, the good news is that if they're there later in the day, they don't stick around after they're let off at the end of the day. So, it's, when the work bell ends at the end of the day, they're gone. They're not sticking around. So, but I do believe we have to be fair to everybody. I do believe we want these construction projects done. I do believe also that if we restrict the hours dramatically and take away Saturday and don't extend any portion of the hours anywhere else, the same residents are going to come back to us a little while later and say, why are these projects taking so long? And that's not fair to them either. Now, I know Kelly's shaking her head, but nobody wants the construction project to go on forever next to their home. And I completely agree with that. So what I'm wondering is, if it's not more prudent, and I really do believe it is, not to add the hour in the morning, but to add additional time in the afternoon and the evening, because quite honestly, at that point, there's not going to be that much disruption to add the extra hour at the end of the day if it takes away potentially, an extra 2 months or 3 months of construction.
I see a bunch of heads over there on that side of the room shaking no, so presumably they will tell us from a construction standpoint whether they think that that's a viable.
I'm sure they will, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to find, I think they're not going to find, anybody up here is not saying that Saturday is off the day. I think we're going to find a consensus that Saturday is...
I'm talking about the makeup time.
Right, I understand, but as far as the makeup time, I'm just thinking that if we're going to choose a time, I think that's going to be the time that if it has to be one of the two, that I think the residents are going to be happier with is later on in the day than in the morning. And at the same time, when we go back to what we were talking about before as far as Saturday, when it comes to, other than what I said before, which was the watering, which I do believe we have to allow the watering on Saturdays and Sundays. We're not going to have a controversy on that. I do believe we should be allowing still. If there's interior work that's not making noise, someone needs to come in. I have no problem continuing being able to do that.
And
Just one more thing. Some of the construction people, the foremen and stuff, have told us we're going into the summer, it's extremely hot. So having the extra hour in the morning when it's not so hot works better for their construction workers who are going to be out there in the middle of the day.
I was debating on mentioning that, Marlene did, and so I was just talking to J.C. That is, truthfully, that's what they said. They said the Saturday, the big thing was one thing, but starting starting a little early, because at 3 o'clock usually the guys are wilted and they don't get much out of them.
Right. And
that's their comments, not mine.
And I guess, thinking in terms of, I don't know what time everybody gets home from work, I tend to get home later, but, a lot of people do get home from work, 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, and probably wouldn't want to hear construction work when they get home, but they might, feel better about construction work starting a little bit earlier because they're leaving their house at 8 or 8:30 or 7 o'clock or whatever it is, and so they're not there. So, everybody has a different experience.
We'll hear from the citizen.
I'd like to say in my building, just because I happen to know everyone's schedule, 75% stay home, either retired or work from home. Only 25% go to work, for the 9 o'clock. And people like to watch the evening news at 6 o'clock. You have to see what happens. But, Jordan, I remember you fighting for the 9 o'clock and having trouble with it, and then I think it went back, and you finally got it, and people are very happy. The feedback that I got, especially yesterday at the picnic, people are thrilled about the no Saturday work. And, I was remiss to tell them that it was a trade-off. But I really don't think that they're worried about extending the duration. We've even discussed it, because that's really, the con that I've been telling them is we're thinking about no more Saturday construction, but you realize this is going to extend the duration, and almost everyone is just fine. Everyone that I talk to is fine with that.
Yeah. Where I come from is, I think we're on the same page that, you want that quality of life. That's what people are paying for to live here. It's just, it's one of those things where they're fine with it, but let's see what happens when a project's still another couple months or whatever down the road. And I'm obviously in favor of taking off the Saturday. The big problem that I have is, like I said, being fair to the people that we have a relationship with. And I know some people may not necessarily like that, but, when you make a deal and somebody gets approval and they come in here and we literally grill them as far as what they're not allowed to do, to change the process midstream, sets a bad business tone. I think that moving forward, I have no problem of having restrictions, but people knowing where we stand, from the beginning of the relationship. I think once you start making changes in the middle of the relationship, you start having some problems in regards to how, how we do business as a municipality. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marlene, does anyone else have restrictions on both days? Is any, we never got a survey, so...
Yeah, we got a survey.
Not
We've
recently.
gotten surveys before.
But,
there's a couple of municipalities that don't work on the weekend.
Right, there's a couple,
There's
but...
some that do.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Jordan,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, there was only a couple of municipalities that permitted work on Saturdays.
No, actually.
I thought most municipalities had at least one day.
Right.
But also the hours, we're also much more stringent than, I think we talked today about Miami Beach. We're more stringent than even Miami Beach, and they separate commercial from residential, right? What's Miami Beach's hours?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
Also, we enforce it more. A lot of the other cities...
Yeah.
take it-
Oh, yeah, of course, no, we're very strict,
You want to say something, Frank?
I go running at 5 a.m., and I can tell you on Brickell, there's construction going on.
At 5 a.m.?
5 a.m.
Well, all right, let's take some public comment.
Yeah.
Gil Baker, thank you for waiting.
Gil Baker, 1001 91st Street, Longwood Towers. I'm very happy to hear that you're reaching consensus towards eliminating construction on Saturdays. I think it's scandalous that we actually ever had construction on Saturdays, considering the fact that Saturday and Sunday are the days when there's most pedestrian traffic. We enjoy our streets by walking, and Saturday has been hell on the East Island for the past, I would say, year and a half or 2 years. So it's great that the council is finally making a move on that. And as far as work hours, I think I speak for many citizens when they say they would like the work hours of construction to be restricted to no earlier than 9 a.m. and no later than 6 p.m., even if it's at the cost of having a project go on for a few more weeks or months because of lost Saturday hours. And I'd also like to include the prohibition of commercial landscaping on Saturdays, because those blowers, as the mayor said, are horrible. They're just horrific. And many of us on the East Island still suffer from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just let me ask you a question, because, I'm sorry, not for you, Mr. Baker, but, one of the things I tried to do, and I know there were other colleagues that tried to do this, was ban the leaf blowers. Maybe just try to just say this right on the top since it's first reading, but what's about the possibility of banning the leaf blowers, period?
Absolutely.
That's just, let's bring it up. We tried. So, I'd like to put an amendment to ban the leaf blowers, period. I don't see why we need to have it here, Just me, if we have a second.
I second that, I support you.
You want to make a note of that, Frank?
Thank you.
Yeah.
No leaf blowers. Paul Basil?
Hello, Paul Basil, 9240 West Bay Harbor Drive. We have 38 projects planned. The East Island right now, when was it 8 o'clock? When school opened?
When was 8 o'clock?
When the school was small, right?
12 hours?
No.
Yeah, you know what I meant. When was construction allowed at 8 o'clock?
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Okay, well, the school has now, how many more students?
Actually, it's not too much different.
Well, it's a lot.
Change when students are there, but...
To have cement trucks, contractor trucks, at 8 o'clock, everybody on the south side of the East Island, it's gridlock. We do not want them starting before 9 o'clock. Daylight savings hour, that's when we get home in the summer. You want to have a beer, you want to sit on your balcony, it's daylight savings. You don't want to come home from work and hear trucks till 7 or 7:30. Everybody here is shocked that you're going to extend the hours Monday through Friday. It's unacceptable, we don't want it. You don't cut Saturday to screw up Monday through Friday. Keep the same hours, and it's unacceptable. Jordan, you keep talking about the, developer contracts, but we live here. We bought here because it's quiet and it's peaceful. And a lot of people, I'm happy that we have new construction and new buildings. but I don't want to have my life ruined for 2.5 years.
Just so you know, I don't disagree with you. My only concern, like I said, is when you make a deal with someone that you keep the deal that you made. I agree wholeheartedly with you. You want to maintain the quality of life, you want to improve the quality of life, and I think this is a great first step. In fact, just adding the leaf blowers is another added incentive. Believe me, this makes my day to get rid of leaf blowers. But, I do have some concerns, as does Councilman Fuller, that, legally, we made a deal with people where there was a financial transaction, and we put limits as to what they can and can't do. I do have some concerns as far as moving forward, that when these people start coming back and saying, well, we couldn't do it because of you guys, how are we going to resolve this on the back end of the deal? Because quite frankly, that doesn't seem very, very fair, particularly if somebody, not even, forget a developer, just...
Well, let me interrupt if I could for a second.
And also, I just want to go back to this again, because we have a lot of people who are speaking. The clock runs for 2 minutes.
Sorry.
We don't interrupt.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It's not a back and forth. You say the speaker says what he or she wants to say.
Yeah.
And then if any members of the council have a comment or the...
All right, thank you. I can respect that. We make a deal that they're going to build it. You're intelligent, you're a critical thinker, so are the builders. The builders are smart. They can hire 10 more painters. They can hire 10 more drywall people. It's 52 days of work. They can get 20 cement people instead of 12, and they can get it done. We bought on this island because it's peaceful. We'd like to keep it that way. We're going to grow. Everybody's happy about that. But respect our quality of life, too, because the East Island for 2 years, it's going to be busy. Roads are closed. All right? So respect us. Thank you.
Real quick, Paul, actually, I have a question for you, because I'm going to ask you one thing, because this is the same thing, I agree with you in the mornings. I have no question I don't want it going earlier in the morning. I think there's a problem with the school. I think there's a problem with, as far as, the timeline. I don't want to change that. I like the 9 o'clock start. My issue, though, is, what I'm worried about, before we even get into the issue of as far as the contracts, is the extending time of the construction, because we've had...
Days or hours?
No, I'm talking about months, because here's the problem.
Yeah.
We've had every single council meeting for the last at least several months. We have people who come in here and tell us, and rightfully so, that there are too many projects going on, sometimes at the same time on the same street, and it's piling up. And
3 or 4 on the same
Right, exactly. So what I'm worried about is that if these things are getting built, some of them are getting built. If they're taking longer, that means longer time with the same repetitive construction.
52 days.
My question is this. Are you willing, and I just don't want people coming back to us later on and arguing that we're making them drag along. Are you willing to trade that off? As a citizen, you're really willing to trade off the fact that you may have an additional 3, 4, 5 months of construction on each individual project, and the noise and everything else comes with it all week long, just because you don't want to add 1 hour on the evenings, not in the morning?
Right. So to answer that, I don't think it's going to go 5 months. It's 52 days, it's about 2.5 months. But to answer your question, I absolutely would, because real life situation. I still real estate. People drive me nuts some days they don't. But when I come home from work, I like to enjoy my view. It's peaceful. There's parakeets, manatees show up in the water. I don't want cement trucks barreling down the street, 2-ton trucks backing up. I absolutely want to enjoy the summer, daylight savings. It's, no Saturday and no extension. Thank you.
And I would ask that other citizens to come up. Please let me know as well. Please let all of us know if you're willing to make that trade-off. Because we're all here to represent you guys. But we want to hear what's your thought process on that trade-off. Because I just don't want to have everybody else turn around later on and say, why did you give them longer time for construction?
So it's 12 months of 52 peaceful weekends for 2.5 or 3 months of a little more work.
It's a trade-off.
I'm willing to trade it off. Thanks.
People to
Thanks. And the school traffic is well at 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Jeff Burkow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Jeff Burkow with the law firm of Burkow, Riddell and Fernandez, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard. Here tonight representing several property owners who are in various stages of construction. And our clients have entered into contracts with their contractors, their construction companies, relying on the existing hours that are in your construction hour ordinance, and that's 52 hours a week. we urge you to find a way to maintain the current 52-hour per week status. Any significant reduction in those numbers is going to extend the life of the project, and not all projects are year-long projects. Some go a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and that will add that much more time to the project. That's additional impact on the neighbors, additional costs on the owner. Those additional costs are unanticipated costs to the owners. It's not that simple to just add a few more workers. That is an expense to our clients that is unanticipated, and it's unfair. You're changing the rules in the middle of the game, and Mr. Mayor, as you pointed out, I think it's really an issue of balance, and it's an issue of fairness. We have about, as you heard from Marlene, there's 6 projects that are presently under construction in the city. There are a number of others that have been demolished and getting ready for construction. They commenced under the old rules and should be able to finish under those rules. And we don't think that this process should be revamped with elections 1 week away. So we would ask you to defer for at least 1 month and consider the 8 a.m. start time. And if you're not going to do that, we would ask you to add an extra half hour at the end of the day to 6:30, but not on Friday nights. That would maintain the 52 hours. We also think you ought to consider a way to allow interior work in these projects as long as the building is sealed. Thank you.
Thank you. Vincent Martino.
Vincent Martino, 1050 93rd Street. I brought the topic up at last month's meeting regarding the Saturday work schedule, and there's a lot on the plate here. And I think the council just mentioned there were 6 existing projects going on. I'm going to throw out a question. I don't know if that's it, or are there more than 6 right now going on?
We'll address Marlene. You're going to address questions?
Okay, I'm sorry. So, okay, 6. So if there's possibly, there's maybe some give and take, if there's 6 projects going on, possibly council might consider for those existing projects, an extension of possibly a half an hour during the day. I'm not in favor of an earlier start. I really don't care, and being someone who's been subjected to almost 18 months now of 40 feet away from my home of construction 6 days a week, it doesn't matter to me if it goes on for another 52 days or 2 months or 2.5 months during the week. As long as I would have a Saturday to myself, I'm happy with that, and I think I'll speak for the residents of our condo association. So there's 5 intelligent people up here. You're going to be pragmatic, make a right choice, think about it before you vote, and you'll have to work it out. This is a sketch, and work it out. But please listen to the residents. Thank you.
Susan Luck.
Susan Luck, 10180 West Bay Harbor Drive. I'm reminded of living in condos. We have condo rules, and we cannot start construction in the apartment until 9 a.m. And actually, I think we end at 5, and we cannot have any workers on Saturday. Even coming and doing quiet work, it reverberates through the building. And I think that that's a model, that we respect that people want their mornings. And the other thing is if you walk around at least my north end of the East Island, between 8 and 9 a.m., it is busy. Everyone's walking their dogs before they go to work. There's a lot of dog walkers, a lot of dogs. And kids are walking to school. Now they're on skateboards, they're on bicycles, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, and I do think it's a potential hazard to people's well-being to have all those trucks coming to multiple sites, especially when there's 8 or 10 sites with potential development within a 2-block radius between 101st and 103rd Street right now. So I would like to keep it at 9 o'clock. I think that, in daylight savings time, to extend it a little bit in the evening is more logical to me, and I certainly support the Saturday. But I think that the morning is problematic because of all the foot traffic and the traffic getting off the island to go to work. Thank you.
Just a quick question for those of you who have children at the K-8. What time do they have to be in school?
It's like 8 o'clock.
They have to be in school at 8 o'clock?
Yeah, well, it's like 8:20, but it varies based on the grades, but generally between 8:15 and 8:30, depending on the teacher.
By 8:30, everyone's in school by 8:30.
Okay, right, thank you.
But it's jammed, people walking right before then.
Yeah.
Mark Schmullian?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Schmullian from 9821 East Bay Harbor Drive. I just want to, Mr. Burkow actually mentioned most of the pieces of information that I was going to sort of say while I was up here, but I just wanted to impart a couple of other things. One of them is that, apart from the fact that you guys want to cut Saturdays out, we actually don't necessarily have an issue with it. I mean, as it is, we're finding it very difficult to actually find contractors that want to come out and work on a Saturday, because they too have families, they too have people, and they also want a little bit of a break. The problem is, as Mr. Burkow mentioned, a lot of these projects were anticipated given a certain amount of hours. And when we sign our contracts and when we decide how much we're going to be able to sell our units for and everything else that is based on investing millions and millions of dollars into the town of Bay Harbor, it's based on a game plan. And as the lady before me mentioned, like when you buy in a condo, you're given a set of condo docs. Those rules are what you live by. And so when we came in here, we were governed by a set of rules and a set of regulations. And we have absolutely no problem if things need to shift in order to enhance people's quality of life. Because at the end of the day, when we build a building, it's our buyers that are going to ultimately be residents here too. And they're going to want a good quality of life. And that's what we're selling to our future buyers. And so all that I do ask you is that there is some sort of compromise here. I don't mind if we have to not work on Saturdays in order to make it better for the rest of the residents, but we do need the hours in order to finish our project without going bust. We need to be able to finish the project on time. Scheduling is probably the biggest factor for us in terms of costs, as well as the fact that for the residents it does finish it earlier, it does give the town their tax revenue sooner. But it really is a compromise between the two of us. So again, we have no issue if you guys want to do things to improve the quality of life, but we do ask that there is some sort of conversation from both sides.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Victor Maya?
Victor Maya, 1155 103rd Street. Only you guys could manage to take something that's good and pure for all of the residences of the island and just complicate it completely unnecessarily. Why is it so hard to unconditionally do something for the residents who have been under siege on this island since as long as I've lived here for almost 2 years now? And it's only going to get worse. Why is it so hard? A few months ago, Mr. Mayor, you couldn't even get anyone on your table to even second a motion to listen to whether construction hours should be changed from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Nobody even seconded that. Then I'm reading here, staff recommends the council go back to 8 a.m. All of a sudden, staff recommends. I didn't hear when Vincent talked about Saturday construction at the last meeting and the one before, anything at all about changing the hours. So staff recommended. Was that you, Mr. Watson? Who in staff decided, hey, let's go ahead and present something here that nobody even considered the last time, that there couldn't even been a second for discussion just a few months ago. So staff all of a sudden decides, hey, we want to do that. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous, that the intent of what is being done here to help everybody on this island, to give us relief, we are under siege. All of a sudden now, let's start the siege earlier in the morning. Let's get those workers there at 7:30 so they can mill around until they start at 8. And I'd like to see, which residents requested the construction start earlier that are not associated with the construction industry or developers. I want to know who they are, because you're saying that right here in the whereas clause, any of those people not in the industry, I want to know.
Thank you. Tom Telesco? Time left? Okay. Victor Ballesta?
Is it you?
I'll be happy to answer that. Anytime staff puts a recommendation, it's not done on the fly. We sit together, discuss it, and as I'm not a construction person, we do consult with people in the building department. And Marlene, the people that come in and are going to be mostly affected by it, and we get input from a lot of different people. And as you can see, I think this was thoughtfully executed, this recommendation, and it's just that, it's a recommendation. What the council ultimately decides to do, that's the council discussion, and that's why the recommendation is written the way it was.
And before you start, I just wanted to say also that staff doesn't decide anything. We, in every municipality, every legislator, whether you're in we were just, those of us who were in Tallahassee, right? They all have aides, they all have people who make recommendations, committees who make recommendations, staff personnel who make recommendations to assist policymakers in coming to a decision, whatever way they end up voting. So we on the council, and I think I speak for all of us, value the recommendations that staff makes to us. We may not agree with some of the recommendations that they make, but that's the way a council manager form of government generally works, where you're relying on staff, whether it's the manager, assistant, the planner, the attorney, the clerk, and so forth, the building official. I think give us a certain amount of guidance, because as has also been repeatedly said here tonight, got a former retired police officer, accountant, lawyer, another lawyer, businessman, and so forth, business owner. I mean, we don't have the same, the expertise that a lot of the other people do.
I'd like to add that I would love to the staff would love to give recommendations that everybody loved all the time, but then the staff really wouldn't be doing their job. It's really important for you to hear everything. And like you said, we might not agree with it, but sometimes it's good to hear the whole picture. If you're only getting half of the side, then you're not really ultimately you will be back asking and dealing with the same issue at another time.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry. And just to address the issue that no resident, actually, Councilwoman Reed was in the office when I was speaking to the president of the condo association that is right next door to a project, that told me that he would love to see the 8 a.m. start, because that would mean that the project would be done earlier. It is St. Regis. We had a long conversation. He wants the project done as quickly as possible. He agrees with the Saturday, but he didn't mind starting at 8. So we have to listen to all of the residents, and some of you might have different opinions, but we try to take into consideration everyone.
He's also in the construction industry.
He's a real estate person. He's a real estate person, and
it really doesn't matter who he is or what he does.
Yeah, and he's the president of the association.
Right, just that somebody made a recommendation. I mean, go ahead, please.
Sure. Victor Ballestas, 101 East Bay Harbor Drive. I'm with the Sereno Project. I just wanted to kind of reiterate the points that Mr. Burkow and Mr. Schmolian made. We've tried to follow the recommendations of the town and try to do everything in our project in order to kind of make it what you guys wanted to see in the town. And, we've done that at great length. We've been here a while. Now we're at the point where we've signed a construction contract with our contractor, and we've been relying on the rules that you guys have put in place, and that is based on a 52-hour work week. And it gets a little bit even more complicated than what we've discussed previously, in that if you add, the way the ordinance is written now, if you take away that time from us, then you're basically adding
approximately 3 months to my project. 3 months to that project means more general condition from the general contractor, it means more money from us, it means 3 more months of construction for the town. So I'm a resident of Miami Beach. I live across the street from one of the largest projects that's under construction today, which is the Ritz-Carlton. And I'll tell you right now, the quality of life for me would be much better if it wasn't happening at all. But it's happening, and Miami Beach's rules start from 8 to 6 p.m. I'll tell you, as a resident, I'd rather they started at 5 a.m. so they can finish the project quicker. So I'm just reiterating the points. If you guys are going to knock off the Saturday, which we're fine with, then, we need to find a way to make up those hours somewhere else. We prefer the mornings more than the afternoons, because in the afternoons, it's tough to get contractors to work. But, that's it, just reiterating the points. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Tricochet? I got that right? Right.
Elizabeth Tricochet, 1140 102nd Street. I wanted to thank everyone first and foremost for taking the time, and it sounds like everyone's on the same page with eliminating Saturday, which is really exciting as a resident. I also have small children that walk to school and home from school every day, and we understand as parents and as residents here that, construction is part of what keeps this town going, and it's what's necessary on a certain level. With that having been said, I think it's important the kids go to school. I and my husband drop our kids off early in the morning, and I don't want them exposed to that in the morning. And I agree with you, Councilman Fuller, that it's important that if we're going to push it, it's in the evening and not in the morning, because we want the children to be able to walk to school and have that morning experience and not be exposed to all of that extra construction that we know is going to happen in the afternoon. We can't change that. So I appreciate you guys taking the time out and considering everything and listening to the residents and everything that we feel. And I appreciate Marlene and Ron presenting all of your opinions as well, because it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Stacy Lurie?
Stacy Lurie, 9271 West Bay Harbor Drive. I'm very glad that you are going to do away with the Saturday construction. I think that that's a very good move in the right direction. As far as adding hours onto either side, I can't get out of my driveway in the morning. I can't get out to take a left turn. I can't even go to the beach, but now I can't take a left turn, which I bring up at every council meeting, to go over the causeway. The idea that there would be trucks on top of all of that traffic, that's unheard of. I mean, it would be a catastrophe. As far as, parents wanting it to be a safe place for their children to walk to school, I completely understand that. Please also understand, I work full-time. I come home, I sit in traffic from downtown Miami to Bay Harbor. The last thing I want when I walk in my door, or try to walk in my door, is first to have already the traffic that I have to take a left onto my street, but then to have the truck traffic going on and the noise and not be able to have my peace. You talk about the contracts that you've signed or you have to do with the contractors and builders. Think about the contract that we signed when we decided to buy on this island and pay a mortgage. I was under the impression that I was going to have a peaceful life. I was born and raised here. I think that maybe you should listen to the residents a little bit more. I think we're willing to allow the project to go on, or they can hire more people to get the job done quicker. It may cost them a few extra dollars, but they'll be making their money back when they sell the 3 months earlier. Thank you.
Is there anyone who wanted to speak on this item who has not? Okay. All right. Any further comment, questions from the council?
Yeah, I would. There was a comment made about, the condominium situation, and I just have to say that, like the code, which is fluid, that we were talking about it earlier, that the code gets changed almost every month. So there's no guarantee that you're going to have anything. When I moved into my condo, I thought it was great. There were no dogs allowed. Now they allow dogs. And this dog barks. I wish we didn't allow dogs, but these things happen. It's constantly changing, and I think someone on the dais mentioned concerns about litigation, that we might be liable. How could we be? Then we'd never be able to change the code. So unless the attorney can tell me that we're in a very precarious position legally, which I don't think we are, right? No problem. Can change the code.
Let me echo that. I mean, this goes back years ago when we were fighting, against the, what were they called, the PRD projects and the 15-story buildings, and there was concern, there's going to be litigation. You know what? We stood our ground, we litigated, and we won. So, I mean, I'm not, as a member of the council, I'm not going to be, swayed by, litigation concerns. I think we all need to do what's in the best interest of all of us here in the town, and the people who work in the town, and the people who build in the town, and come to some type of reasonable solution. But, I'm not going to be concerned about litigation.
Yeah, and basically, my position is no Saturdays, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. I'm flexible on things like inside painting, but other than that's how I stand on the hours. I'm sorry, did I say 8?
You said that.
No, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. 9 a.m., sorry.
Well, I'd like to make a motion, because I don't think there was a motion made, right?
No,
There's no motion.
watering.
I'd like to make a motion. Sorry, I'd like to make a motion, since there was no motion made for the ordinance, to approve the ordinance at 9 to 6, no Saturday, with the 2 amendments, but also adding that...
Stop.
Yeah, right, exactly. What amendment?
What amendments are you talking about?
The 2 that we discussed about, the ones that Councilman Fuller mentioned, there was one.
The
and then
spraying.
The spraying on Saturdays and Sundays. The second is also the restriction on no leaf blowing. And also, I would like to add that, that you said that there was, 6 projects?
6 or 7.
Oh, well, that the projects that currently have permits, and that's it, that they would be grandfathered in. But and the reason why I'm doing this is because I think that I'd rather get rid of the ones that we have and not set it in stone where we change it from 9 to 8 or 6 to 7 or something like that. I'd rather say, listen, moving forward, we have a standard and this is our new standard. But rather than making a change and saying we're going to move it to 8 o'clock or move it to 7 o'clock, it's not what I particularly want. I take my kids to school, early in the morning. And when I get home, I like to, enjoy my family too, and I obviously am not real big on anything on Saturdays anyway, but I think that moving forward, I think we need to be, finish the projects that currently are there, because it's certainly going to be a lot more projects than the ones that we have, and we need to be looking more proactively. So that's my motion for first reading.
I'll second it.
Can I ask you to amend that maybe instead, just on the last part where you talk about, the 6 existing projects, could we maybe give them like 60 days? Because some of them are brand new, they're going to take a year and a half. So why don't we give them a little time to make arrangements?
How many, I don't know how many of them are new. I know some have been in construction for a long time, so...
Well, some of them are in early stages. They have permits, though. I'm sorry, I've been saying 6 or 7, but I haven't been taking into account the West Island, and the West Island has the same rules that the East Island has.
Yeah, I know.
And there's more there.
I think it's really complicated, that last part. I'm not in favor of that.
How many project, we know there's X number under construction, but how many have permits, that have been issued but haven't started construction yet?
I couldn't tell you
Where you
now.
draw the line, as to...
There's 3 or 4 that are very close. I don't know if they've been issued yet.
I think the problem is that if somebody purchases a property and they come in and they get a permit, there's an understanding that they have a budget as to what they're going to do. I think that moving forward, that someone be well aware of what the standard is in the town before they cough up their money and go get a permit and invest all that money. Regardless of whether it's a building on the East Island or a house on the West Island, there's a lot of houses being done on the West Island where they're spending, in some cases, probably close to as much as on the East Island, where, they have a tight budget, and some of those projects are not developers, but owner-build. And, is it fair for someone who invests millions of dollars in buying a property on our town that's building their own personal home, and we're gonna cost them, in some cases, a significant amount of money? I don't think that's where we want to set that example. I think moving forward, we should set the new standard. And I know that there's a lot of sensitivity about this issue because there's an election in a week, but truth be told, there are residents in this town that are building their own homes, and, it's not really fair to them also because there is a cost associated with that. Not everyone that is doing a project happens to be an outside developer. And it's, I think that if we're going to treat someone at some standard, we have to have an equal standard for everybody. But I am not in favor of necessarily of changing the hours. So I think that's a good compromise where people are going to walk away where we can live with what we have as long as in the long term we maintain that quality of life. So we have a motion and a second.
Can I add a friendly amendment there?
What's that?
Which is, on item C, which is landscaping activities.
Yeah.
Eliminate Saturdays?
Eliminate the Saturday work for the landscaping activity too.
So I don't have a problem with that.
Is that just commercial?
Yeah, commercial.
I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. You got that?
Sure. And did you say that the grandfathering in is of the projects that are currently being built on the East Island and the West Island?
That have permits, yeah. In the town that have permits, right. They have a permit.
Can we list them?
I don't know.
An ordinance, no, but we would have an internal accounting for
I'm
that.
sure we would, yeah.
No, I'm not in favor of this. Victor's right. We took a good thing and ruined it.
I also don't think this is the best solution. I mean, I think that some of the Mr. Burkow and others who have spoken understand the issue about Saturdays and that, some extension of hours on, if it's not in the mornings, and if it's a half an hour in the afternoon until 6:30 or something like that, or 8:30 to 6:30 to try to make that up, I think accomplishes what you're trying to do by your amendment of grandfathering them in. I mean, if you give them the extra hours, even if you want to do it just for those projects, I don't know, something like that to keep it off a Saturday and make up those 52 hours or a portion of them, I think is a better idea. I mean, I didn't mean to be rude before. I was sort of like Googling construction hours in other towns. At Bell Harbor, they start at 8:30 in the morning. The reason I asked you about what time the kids have to be in school is that if they're in school by 8:30, that alleviates some of the problem of like starting at 8 o'clock when parents are taking their kids to school, or kids are going on their bikes or skateboards by themselves. So I was looking to try to figure out some way we can, none of us are going to be happy with this ordinance completely. So I'm looking for some way to just try to come to a
How about this? There's an even better compromise, because to get rid of Saturday would be even better. How about grandfathering in only the existing ones from, and give them an extra hour, do 8:30 to 6:30, because I'm not real big on 8, but,
Let me say this. I know what you're saying, and I'd rather have the half hour too, except at that point, I'd rather do the 8 only because of the timing. I hate going to 8. I'd rather stay at 9, but the problem is the timing there. That means you're going to have people showing up with the construction just as the kids are going to school. So the exact same time, and that's a problem.
So how would you propose it, the hour?
I don't love either. I don't love either.
I mean, there's no real limits.
But I'd rather, look, my first preference is that it's 9 and with the grandfather. But if we're not going to do that, I'd rather then go to the 8 instead of 8:30. I just think 8:30 is the worst possible time, because like I said, that means construction vehicles are showing up just as the kids are getting into
So
school.
you say 8 to 6, but require them to do a pre-setup prior to that, so
If
that
you
way...
give them 8 o'clock, they're going to be there at 8 o'clock. Construction workers are going to start right at the first.
They don't even have it now. You're giving a group of people an hour in the morning that they don't have.
Like I said, I don't love doing that either, but I'm saying, I'd rather do the grandfathering portion, because then once, that's what's already set, and therefore, as that finishes out, we never have to worry about this again.
I'm not sure I get to really understand the purpose of the grandfathering, to be perfectly honest with you, because the residents have made it clear that there's sort of an immediate need to take out Saturday construction, and I think everybody, even the developers, seem to understand the issue of Saturday construction. So to say you're going to let, 6 or 7 projects on the you know, in the East Island continue working on Saturdays, and a dozen houses that are being built on the West Island to continue working on Saturdays, I don't know how that really makes anybody happy, you know, because we know that some of these projects, if they just were broken ground, they may go on for another year.
But no Saturdays, just adding another hour.
None of these are great for anybody.
I understand that, but you're looking to grandfather those projects in, if I understand it, so that they can continue to work on Saturdays. I would rather give them the hours, at the additional hours, at whatever time of the day it is, so that they can make it up and get as close to the 52 hours a week as possible.
Then that's what we're talking about. Give them the hour. I'm saying my problem is 8:30. I just think that timing, I just want the 8:30 out of the way. I think that's dangerous for everybody.
Make an amendment and change it to the 8 and, you know.
So I'll second, if you're doing it to the 8, then I'll second it on that.
You know, in that way, but just for these, not for everybody,
No, that's terrible.
you know.
Even Marlene said it's going to be a nightmare for them, and people aren't going to understand. How are we going to publish this? Didn't you say it would be tough to enforce
Is it?
and not fair?
It depends on how you word it. If it says, who have permits,
Well, how many is it?
I don't have an answer for that right now.
Well, I mean, this
And
is,
that's like a year and a half of pain continuing. It really, it's not that helpful.
Then hold on, then, I know we talked about this before, but then, as much as we don't want to defer this, maybe we need that list before we make a decision here. That might be...
Can I ask Mr. Burkow a question? Because I want to make sure, if you would, please.
There'll be more next
I just want to make sure I understand what, one of your suggestions. Were you saying that it would be, when speaking with Mike, were you saying that it would be sufficient, you know, from your client's standpoint to just go from 9 to 6:30, 4 days a week? Is that what you're saying, knowing that there would be no Saturday?
8 to 6:30. No Saturday.
Okay.
Not give both sides.
All right, sorry, I misunderstood you.
7:30 to 6.
You're not going to get 7:30. I don't
Oh,
think
it will interfere with school.
What?
It will interfere with school.
24/7.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to think of something that would be reasonable. I mean, that people can... But I didn't understand what you said before.
but let me ask you a question. I mean, theoretically, you know, having an extra hour on the weekday it's to your benefit also. So, because they're already there, and so even if you're losing 2 hours, it's still an advantage because you're not working on the Saturday. So the Saturday really, you know, 8 to 6, where you lose 2 hours, but no Saturdays, that's not a bad deal for you, right?
No, we agree with that. Correct.
Jordan, how can you go back? You were, the champion of 9 a.m.
I am, and I'm trying to get it done permanently. What I'd rather do is get these ones out the door and never go back to it, rather than I'm not in favor of changing it for everyone, and it seems like to me that there was more of a consensus to go to 8 o'clock for everything, and
There
I'd
are
rather...
a lot of them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't polled everybody, but, I mean, from what I can see, I'd rather settle for 6 buildings and a couple houses, and then I never have to deal with it again, than for the rest of my life, deal with construction at 8 o'clock in the morning, which I'm not particularly really in favor of.
Nobody here wants Saturday, and nobody here wants before 9 o'clock. The problem is, we've got certain projects that are already set, and we've got to deal with the kids at the same time as school, and we want to get these things done and out of the way so that they're all...
That's the last thing that people want done and out of the way. They're willing to take the extra 2.5 months. You heard it tonight, and I hear it all the time.
Both sides of it. Here's the problem. I'm agreeing with the vice mayor. And I'll say this: if we grandfather in those, or I say grandfather in those that are already that have the permits, and that we're going ahead for it, those have the 8 o'clock start. That's it. Nobody after that. Nobody after that goes before.
You're actually making it worse for people. You're making it worse for some neighbors.
It ends the construction on Saturdays. We can't have everything. It's
Why not?
impossible.
We can.
We
Can.
can.
You knew how these guys were
Can't
going
day
to.
one.
You knew what. You could just look at this section of, wonderful
What does that have to do with
developers.
anything? You know that people...
It's a matter of getting things done that works for everybody. The problem here is that the problem is that we have to have a way to actually get these things done. And look, we all want the construction done so that people can actually have a peaceful week and a weekend. And that's the issue.
I just want to say, in any community, you have residents, you have developers, you have business people, you have all, there are a lot of different segments of society, and I respect everybody, and I'm particularly sensitive to, again, the quiet enjoyment and the quality of life, but, you can't ignore the fact that, there is development going on, and that there are economic interests at play as well, and we need to make some type of accommodation
and come up with some, in my view, some reasonable amendments to this code so that we get what we as residents, get some relief from all of the noise on Saturdays. But I mean, I think that there's got to be some give back somewhere so that these projects will get...
Was that disrespectful? I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Just that these people are constituents, you're stakeholders in the community as well. But listen, guys, the bottom line is, you come in, you build your beautiful buildings, you sell them, and then you grow. And when we're built out, you move on to the next place. These people want to live here for 50 years. I want to stay where I am, too. That, no disrespect intended at all.
And by the way, and as you correctly mentioned, I was the champion to get it to 9 a.m., but what was it, 3 years ago, it was at 8 o'clock. For how many decades was it at 8 o'clock? What I'd like to do, and one of the things that I've tried to be consistent with since I've been on this council, is be fair. And it's not just to developers, there's also private homeowners where there's going to be a financial impact. And, and people from the audience can laugh at it, but, if someone comes to our town and they buy a piece of property and they're building their family dream home, and now they're going to be impacted financially, those are not necessarily the people at tonight's meeting, but you better believe that you're going to be hearing about it in 2 months. I think that we need to be consistent, not just on the East Island, but on the West Island, that we want to be able to treat people fairly, that if they come and they invest in our town, that we have a certain standard. Now that we've raised the standard, they should all be under advisement as such. But it's not, I don't particularly think it's fair to change the rules in the middle of the stream when people have invested in some cases.
Then we'll never be able to change it, never, ever.
That's not true. We're changing it.
How can we ever change
right now.
the code?
We're just not doing exactly what you want, and the fact that it's...
What they want, not me.
It's not from, please, it's not everybody, and to be honest, it's, this has somewhat become politicized because we have an election in a week. Had this happened 3 months ago or 3 months in the future, I'm not so sure that this would have been exactly as vocal. I think that everyone on this council has to vote their conscience, but again, my interpretation is I would rather have the 9 to 6 period for the future, and, a year from now, 6 months from now, I never have to deal with construction on a Saturday or early in the morning when I'm walking my son to school. That's what I'm looking for. And the last thing I want to do, because, a lot of people that come here and they speak and they say, well, we don't want this, we don't want that, it's going to cost money. No one here in this audience, including us on this dais, know the financial repercussions that's going to be made by people that invested money in this community. What if they go out of business? What if that project dies and we're stuck with the remnants of it? If anyone looks on East Bay Harbor Drive and they look at what happened with that hotel, how long have we been dealing with that vacant property? And our hands are tied because the state statute literally gives them until God knows how long for them to do whatever they want with that project, and we can't force them to comply. You don't see the ramifications to the people that live next door to that building. When we do something, we want to get it done, and we want to minimize the impact. And it's easy to politicize it and say, oh yes, I'm for the people. But what you're not dealing with is 6 months from now, if we have, a shell of a property, that's not going to look really good in our beautiful neighborhood. And you have to take it both ways and come up with a compromise. And I think we're actually taking a lot more than we're giving.
I don't think anybody here on this dais is politicizing it. None of us. And one gentleman mentioned it. And let me tell you something. If you want to talk about politicizing, how about last year? Every March, we see right before the election these cheesy little things, naming the park after a fallen officer, 13 months before it's even going to happen. If that wasn't an election stunt, then I don't know what was. And nobody even called you out then. No, he opened the door. He opened the door.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that I think we need to get back to the issue at hand. And I will say, personally, I don't think it makes any difference whether there's an election or not, to be perfectly honest with you, because I think it's just the timing of the amount of the projects.
Right.
Well, Mrs. Newhut, you're always off the wall as far as I'm concerned, but beyond that, the fact of the matter is that the residents, I don't think the residents came to the council meetings in March knowing that there was an election and decided now's the time because it's an election. They're living through this experience of the building, and so they came out. And that's the way I look at it. You know what? And I've been doing this, as Mrs. Newhart pointed out, for 20 years, and I'm not going to make a decision tonight based upon the fact that there's an election this week. You know, because there's a lot of other things that go on in all of our lives.
That way toward a citizen. That's very nice, very nice.
All right.
So we...
Did you want us to provide a list?
Where are we in the Robert's...
Well, there was a motion and a second,
And he made an amendment to...
right.
Did you want us to provide a list of the permits,
That's the other alternative is before we make a decision, so we defer it out to see the permits that are open, so we know how many we're talking about.
I mean, yeah, but that pushes back a month. I'd rather get the list on second reading, and we can look at the list on second reading, and we can all, and we can deal with it then, but, I'd rather move it forward than wait another month. At the end of the day, who wants to wait another month? It's just, but I think the 8 to 6 for people that currently have permits is a good, it's a tolerable,
Making it worse for the existing neighbors.
than the current Saturday? Okay, well.
Okay. I agree.
Even though you're calling out from the audience, one thing I did say to the town attorney before the meeting started was to carve out, a district basically, that the construction near the school would start later. So even if in other areas it started earlier, then we have to take into consideration that there are kids going to school, parents taking them there.
Right.
So, you say X feet within the school, whatever the reasonable distance is, that construction's just going to start there later. Okay?
Yeah,
Because I think that's really important.
yeah, no problem with that. I mean, I'm not even sure what we're voting on, here, honestly.
I had the following...
Let's listen to the town attorney.
A, also allowed Saturday and Sunday watering. Section C added no leaf blowers. Section C added no commercial landscaping. And Section A was 8 a.m. for all construction sites with present permits, except for a perimeter around the school at 9.
How much of a perimeter?
I think you're going to have to deal with the fact that, most kids are walking to school, I think. I don't know, because I don't have kids that young anymore. The kids are walking to school along East Bay Harbor Drive, I'm assuming. So I think you'd have to be particularly concerned about the Monarch project, and if there's any, there's no other construction that I'm aware of right now on East Bay Harbor. I'm not sure. No, the Kai's on West Bay Harbor.
Yeah, well, it's 9.
No, I was talking within the proximity of the school.
I think so. And also a 9 to 6 rather than 8 to 6.
I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear that last one.
9 to 6 on A and B as well.
Right, it's 9 to 6, it's only 8 to 6 for the current...
Current permits.
Current
That's where we stand.
Now, let me ask you a question, because let's go one step further so we're abundantly clear.
Can't hear you, please.
Sure. Let me be very clear, because, when we say current permits, this has an effective date of when we approve it. And the way it works is, any day somebody can come and rush and get a permit. My intent is not to have everybody rush tomorrow and go get a permit. Can we have an effective date of
in progress
for this, as of, today? Is that possible? Because, my intent is not within the next month to have every single darn project try to rush and go get a permit. My intent is to grandfather or allow some leeway to the people that have invested over the last month, months or years or whatever, but not to be some
Sure,
free-for-all.
let me answer that.
Yeah.
15 minutes left. I can't make the effective date of the ordinance, however, I can make the exception as of today's date.
Okay.
So all sites with permit as of April 13th,
Okay.
2014.
See, and that's important,
2015,
because
yes.
what you don't want to do is allow people to come and at the last minute try to rush and get permits because they know, oh, in 30 days I can go get this exception, and that's not the intent. The intent is for the people that haven't already invested and have their stakeholders, that's it, but no more.
Let me ask a question. How about the people who, not just that they've got a permit in hand, but they've begun actual construction?
Mr. Ballestas, I wanted...
Is there a
No, I
legal...
mean, I wanted to hear from, we've heard from varying segments. You can come back if you had another comment or suggestion, since we're trying to craft this as we...
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys are trying to be fair. We've been at this for probably 2.5 years now. We've demolished the building that's in place. We had a demolition permit. We submitted for permits probably 4 months ago, and we're about a week away from getting our building permit. So I would suggest when a building permit is submitted, so people can't come in and submit building permits, but if I've submitted a permit, I'm just waiting to receive it from the city, then I'm assuming that I'm okay.
Well, I think that makes sense, but you know what, I'm going to tell you that,
By the way, my GMP contract with the contractor and everything has been signed, my loan has been published, so I'm just waiting to get my permit from the city, so that's the position that we're in with Sorrento.
so, from my standpoint, I don't know how crazy I am about this proposed ordinance at this point, but I'm willing to vote for it on first reading, and then see what it looks like when it comes back, so that I can study it between now and second reading in a month. So I'll give it that, because I don't know whether it works or not.
Right.
But I think, we're making some progress. So I'm willing to look at it. And I am a little bit concerned about saying that it's April 13th. And one of the things I want to see in the next month is, where these projects stand. I mean, who has applied for a permit, where they're at in terms of getting a permit, how many projects are actively under construction on both islands. I mean, I think, that's information that we're going to need to make that determination.
So just so I know, for drafting purposes, is there still going to be the condition for the 8 a.m. exception for all construction sites who have submitted permit applications as of today's date, or are we going to keep that out?
I would say submitted is fair, but, but I don't know how many that is, and that's one of the things I want to see. But I think it's fair that if you've submitted a permit application, there could be, a dozen reasons why that application hasn't been, or the permit hasn't been issued, that has nothing to do with the applicant, Mr. Burke.
Can I just suggest, you just can't rush in and get a building permit in this state.
No, I know. No, we understand that.
So, I think the April 13th cutoff date is really counterproductive.
No, we're not saying if it's already been issued, if it's been applied for.
It's been applied for. So you've applied for it, then if the town takes 4 months, it's not on you. But the intent is that not everyone try to rush and submit a permit tomorrow morning because they think that they're gonna get away with something that wasn't intended for them.
Frank, could you repeat your last question, what you just spoke about?
Yeah, the question was whether it was for sites with permits, the 8 a.m. exception, sites with permits presently, or for sites who have submitted vertical permits.
Okay, and it's submitted.
Submitted. So it's here. I mean, it's cut and dry. We either have it or we don't have it.
Right. All right. So, can I call a question?
Go ahead and poll.
The amendments.
Councilmember Sarver.
It's all together.
4.
Councilmember Reed. Opposed. Councilmember Fuller.
4.
Vice Mayor Leonard.
4.
Mayor Yaffe.
4, as I said, only because it's first reading and...
Yeah, it's first reading.
Passes.
Always change it.
With all the changes.
What are we going to do about 11 o'clock?
Seeing everybody tomorrow night?
I don't know about that.
Good luck with it. It is what it is. 11 o'clock is the end time, and, I guess we're going to have to see.
Far in, please, we could use a drink.
Listen, I think that if we want to be fair, we need to end the meeting at 11 o'clock like we said we were going to do and try and see how that works out. And, if you all don't want to come back tomorrow night, if there's nothing that's really urgent, we can do it.
Can we have,
For me, it's tax season.
can we do number 17?
I'm going to step out for a minute so you all can vote.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes left. I'd like to do number 17 out of order since it's a staff item.
Thank you, and I have an expert here.
Okay.
Approval of change orders 1, 2, 3 in the amount of $90,172 in the favor of M&J Construction. All these changes were...
Hold on, excuse me, can we have a little bit of order? We have a few minutes left, we need to get this item done.
All these changes, these first 3 change orders are as a result of the collision of the Rockstar with the bridge and the basket coming down and the boat striking it. The first one was just to make sure the anchor bolts were capable of maintaining the operation trunnions of the bridge. They were pull-out tests, they were successful. The second was the shimming, which we were going to try to put off until we installed the new lock bars and shimmings and lock guides. But because of the shifting of the bridge, it just really wasn't possible to lay that off until we installed that new equipment. That was $7,800. Okay, and the last one was the heat straightening, which also is a strength issue. We looked at 3 companies. The one that we were recommending, and from our engineering, our engineers, was the Seacoast in the amount of... look at it.
Can we get a motion?
Move it.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
I'm sorry. I want to talk about the bid process. We talked about it earlier, just for the benefit of the audience. Ron, can you reiterate what we're saying?
Yes, we because the amount of money on the heat straightening, we got 3 bids. 2 are from companies that were outside of Florida and some distance. The one that we chose or recommend is the one currently that we have used in the past, has done work for us. They were the ones that are already a sub on this job and doing most of the fabrication work of the steel. They are a turnkey solution where we don't have to provide them equipment, materials, expertise, engineering services. Anything that goes wrong, we're not going to get a change order on a change order. This is a total cost of what it's going to cost to straighten the girder that supports the outside support system of the bridge. If you have any questions for our engineer, he's here from Hardesty. Al Bance is here if you have any question for him. But the other bids were not really apples to apples. One, we had to provide the method for them to get under the bridge to even do the work. The other one was we have to provide them with the equipment to do the work, which I thought was pretty nuts. The fact that they weren't on site and they were just giving these estimates on pictures and conversations. Seacoast is well known in the industry, and they've done their work is good.
Did you mention the insurance also, that we're getting most of this back?
Thank you for reminding me. We have 3 insurance policies on the bridge: liability, boiler and machinery, and then for revenue, lost revenue if the bridge was ever disabled. The boiler and machinery should cover about 90% of the cost of this change order.
All right, great. So, if I have any other discussions, a poll vote, please. All right.
Councilmember Fluor?
4.
Councilmember Reed? 4. Councilmember Salva?
4.
Vice Mayor Lerner?
4.
And Mayor Yaffe stepped out.
Great. Can we have number 18 out of order? This is for Councilmember Fuller.
Okay, you want to read it?
You can read your own if you
No,
want.
you can go for it. Just a discussion requested by Councilmember Fuller regarding possibility including transgender health care insurance coverage as a benefit of the employment in fiscal year 15-16.
Can I get a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. Can I have a voice vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Great. All right. Anything else that we have?
We have 6 minutes
13.
left.
We have 6 minutes left.
13.
Consider consideration and approval of a business tax receipt occupational license for a space located at 1076 King Concourse. The applicant Polo Rujo is requesting approval up to open a bar and tapas on the ground floor of King Concourse. According to section 23-5-14, any uses not specifically mentioned in the town code require town approval.
All right.
Move it. Second.
Okay, discussion, Mrs. Newhart?
And before it comes up, the distance to the school, the council has the prerogative to approve it, no matter what the distance is to the school, and there are many other establishments that serve alcohol, such as all of the businesses on 95th Street, and some of the businesses on 96th Street that already have alcohol licenses.
Francis Newhart, 1060 King Concourse. I must tell you that originally, since I own businesses on the King Concourse and restaurants, and we plan on putting on another one in the future, we deal with these licenses. We know what they're about. Therefore, I'm telling you right now, when that school, that wasn't really a school, came in as a learning center, I told you from the very beginning it was going to be a problem for the King Concourse. That is a business district. That's number one. So now we have in the center of the King Concourse a school. And I was told that certain usages do not, they have distances from these type of establishments. And yes, we do have restaurants, meaning bars with serving food, but they're categorized on the business tax receipt as a restaurant. I do not see why this particular bar, they're claiming it to be a bar, but if you read what they're serving food, and it's a bar too. So why can't they be called the usage of a restaurant? Why do they have to start trouble and call it a bar, which we do not have under allowed permitted uses in the occupational license, for you to change the entire ordinance to allow this bar? And there's more to it. You have restrictions. Unless it's retail or a restaurant, they have to accommodate with parking. Are you charging these people now for parking? Because now it's categorized as a bar. I know too much about this for you to change it to a bar. And I'm going to sit here and wait to hear your comments, because I will bring my attorney here the next time because of what you made me go through.
There is no...
So you're against this, right?
No, I'm not against him putting a restaurant. What's the big deal? Call it a restaurant. Why do we have to make trouble? You know, it seems like everything, like Victor said, everything becomes complicated.
Mrs. Newhart, I'm sorry, your time is up. Mrs. Kennedy, I don't believe is still here. All right. Is there any
She would be
other,
in favor, believe me.
is there any discussion from council?
Just clarify, what is the difference if it were to be called a bar or a restaurant?
It's a different license. They choose to be called a bar.
Different liquor license.
Yes.
Also, if it's a bar, they have to pay for parking. It's required. It's not retail, and it's not a restaurant.
In none of the existing buildings. They're all
That's
grandfathered.
not an existing restaurant or bar.
We don't have to change the code. The code allows the council to approve businesses that are similar to other businesses on the concourse. There are bars, full-service bars, within some of the restaurants already. You have the prerogative to approve this application, should you wish to do so.
Quick question, if we were to make a new restaurant, like on the corner that's talked about, it might come, or, in a totally different space, we were to put a restaurant there, would they be required to pay for parking?
A new building would be required to pay for parking. If they tore down the building and they
Right,
wanted
but an
to do a
existing
restaurant...
building?
Right.
Okay.
Marlene, I'd like to call the question.
I don't understand why
I'm
it
sorry.
can't be a restaurant.
All right.
It's serving
All right,
food and it's
Mrs.
serving
Newhart,
liquor.
Mrs. Newhart, thank you.
You're just making it harder for us. Thank you.
Mrs. Newhart. Call the question, please. You can do a voice vote on this.
Yes.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Ayes have it. We're going to motion to adjourn, right? I'd like to move to adjourn.
Before you adjourn, I'm sorry, you have to establish whether you want to come back tomorrow night or you want to come back next month.
Next month.
For the record, I will not be here tomorrow night.
Well, no, it's tomorrow morning. I'm sorry. It's
No, tomorrow night.
No, next month.
Well, let's see hold on, which ones are we bringing back real quick? We have, because the only thing...
14, 15, 16 only.
Right.
Yeah, it's...
The 19th.
Next month. I
19th.
assume you're gonna, I'm sorry, 19.
19, yeah. 19.
You're looking at the...
All right, so we'll get the alert.
I don't mind deferring 19 if that means we have no meeting tomorrow, but we're less than going to have it anyways.
Oh, I mean, are there any emergencies here, Ron, that can't wait a month? If there's an extension on a TDR, if the council is making them wait for 30 days, then
We can...
there'll be an automatic 30...
automatic 30 days
extension.
You get to push it back.
Yeah. Anything that's carried over...
Yeah, get to the front.
Anything that's carried over should go under unfinished business.
Are you authorized to negotiate on the 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock thing for Mr. Brookhouse?
All right, I think
All
we're
right,
done.
Mr. Burkow.
Okay, so we're meeting next month.
Next month. Good night.
Thank you.
See, these shorter agendas work.